already started going.
The very thing that made the fabric icky for you to work with.
Oh, it made it easy for you.
What?
Yeah, I could see how
He's
the
got
squish,
an
now that you
offer
talk
for
about
you.
it, the squish could be
Yeah,
good for you.
but I did have to use this plastic wrap to get them in and out easily.
Okay.
My keyboard isn't connecting.
We are beginning our Open Space Ecology Committee meeting May 15th, 2019. Oh, hello. So our meeting has begins, and we should do roll call.
Here.
I think we're missing one a member, and he is coming in soon. So roll call is done. Unless anybody has any uncalling. Okay, adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add to the agenda?
I'd just like to suggest that we shuffle the order ever so slightly. Let's move the approval of the minutes to after the presentation. When the agenda was posted, I did not know if we were going to have a different presenter, so we'll move number 5 up. And then since Sven is also the owner of Project Green Home that we are considering visiting next month, let's move that item up right after his presentation so we can talk about that timing while he is here with us. Talk about that plan.
Perfect. That sounds good. Thank you. Everybody.
I move that we approve the modified agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Looks like we're ready to. Agenda is approved. Oral communications. Public comment on the agenda is welcome at the discretion of the chair, and the chair has no other public because we can move on.
Those.
And then we do building reach codes, City of Brisbane. Sven
Hi there. So,
Thiessen?
yes, sound H. Yes, perfect. Hi. What is your really with
It's for our home.
You're
audience.
live. Yeah.
For our home audience that watch.
so before I begin, may I ask what does anyone have a background in implementing city codes or in insulation or building standards or things like that?
Maybe this much in building standards.
Okay. No, that's good. No, I just wanted to know where
I've installed
was that.
insulation before.
So have I.
Excellent. So, can you guys see what
Yes,
I've got?
we have
Yeah,
it
we
right
have
in
it.
front of
Okay,
us.
great. Okay, so what are reach codes? And the term reach code is what the state uses to describe them, but it's not really a good term that I've learned. It's essentially a means for a local jurisdiction to say, hey, we are different than the rest of California. We are different because of these things. And so we would like to, rather than implementing what you are asking us to implement and requiring us to implement, we'd like to implement this, which is different. It's instead of saying, you're going to give us cherry pie, but we actually like chocolate brownie with vanilla ice cream and walnuts. And you're just getting that dessert versus the cherry pie. It's not you're getting both, you're getting one or the other. So when we talk about workload, instead of eating the work of eating the cherry pie, we're going to eat the chocolate instead. Okay? It's not we have to do both. It's we have to do one or the other. So that's the term reach codes. So where this all comes into is every 3 years the state of California sets new standards for building. Oops, sorry. So we had the 2016 building codes. We had and as part of that, you could put in 2016 reach codes instead of, again, what they prescribed. Then you had 20 more reach codes. It didn't matter what you did. And then the 2019 codes came along, and on top of that, and that on top of is not really a good, it's a misnomer, because again, we're having chocolate as opposed to cherry pie. It's we're instead of implementing a very fat book that has 500 pages, which you're going to your code writers and planners are going to implement this book as required, rather than implementing pages 23 and 24 as written by the state of California, we want to implement page 23A and 24A, which are the Brisbane specific codes because they are specific to the values and the geography and the interests of our citizens. And it just so happens that that's what the blue arrow on the right-hand side is that those are improved performance codes. They are advanced codes because, for example, we have a lot more electric vehicles here than we do in, say, God bless the good people in Fairfield. No comparisons here. But there are, due to income disparities, a whole bunch of reasons, education, that there are more. The electric vehicle density here and adoption rate is higher than other parts of the state. So they wrote code that said we're just going to do it across an average.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
So at the bottom it says state building codes, safety, energy, efficiency, etc. So those are basic codes that everyone has to do. There's
Every 3 years, the state comes out with a.
And those include all of the basic safety things that we would, earthquake safety, etc., etc. But on the REACH codes, is there some kind of determination that they really are better or more enhanced than the state codes? I mean, is there some, guru that says, yes, this is a REACH code, rather than, no, this is sideways or downwards?
Yes. So you have to go through a cost effectiveness calculation to determine if, in other words, if you're adding. Let's actually go forward, and I'll go into some of the specifics of what we're proposing around building codes.
Okay.
That will make that sort of clear. But what I wanted to make sure was that the REACH. So I'll go back. The REACH codes are not. You don't have to implement. You don't implement the state building code plus this extra stuff on top of. It's more you're taking out a certain set of pages and putting other pages in. So the workload for your city staff, instead of memorizing code, the state code for pages 5 through 12, you're memorizing the Brisbane specific REACH codes for pages 5 through 12, and the other 500 pages stay the same.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that part, but I wanted to make sure that they were judged of equal or higher value.
Oh, yes.
By someone who's qualified to do
Yes.
that. Okay.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
I didn't know that, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, so they absolutely are. But we've heard pushback that some planners have not realized that they're concerned that by having to implement REACH codes and incorporate REACH codes that it's actually more work. In reality, they're just switching one specific sections out of a much larger code adoption. And that code adoption, again, occurs every 3 years.
Okay.
Okay, so why adopt the REACH code? Okay, so we know that we are entering a climate crisis. We know that we need to address this. This is our responsibility. That's why Peninsula Clean Energy was formed, to accelerate the decarbonization of our electric grid and to decarbonize as best we can what we have sort of control over in San Mateo County. So, why adopt the REACH code? Because it will accelerate and advance those goals of decarbonizing our society. And on top of that, there's multiple added benefits. An all-electric home happens to be both safer and healthier. And when I use the term safer, I'm particularly referring to an induction stove where it's, having lived with one for the last 8 years, it's really hard to burn oneself on an induction stove compared to a conventional or old-style electric and gas, because the temperature of the actual what you're cooking on never exceeds the boiling point of the liquid that you are heating. So when we can go, again, we're going to talk about touring my home, or does anyone here have an induction stove?
I know what it is because I work for a caterer and we have them there.
Okay, and
so.
have you known anyone that's burned themselves on one?
So far.
Yeah, not so far. So that's on the safer side. Then on the healthier side, there's been a large number of studies just recently come out about indoor air quality associated with the combustion of natural gas on stoves, and you don't have that problem when there's no combustion. So again, these buildings are safer and they are healthier, and on the EV side, by having actual availability to charging infrastructure, if you see that there's charging infrastructure, you're much more likely to get an EV, because if you don't have anywhere to charge, you're not likely to get one. Now, again, as we know by 2050 we have to reduce our emissions by 80%, which means leaving behind natural gas as a technology and a cost savings that was good 20 years ago, and we're not going to have that anymore. It's really makes fiscal prudence sensible. We don't want to avoid stranded assets of installing gas appliances and gas fixtures, knowing that 5-10 years from now we're just going to replace them with electric anyway. It just makes more sense to start off the bat with electric. So again, one of the big questions we've been getting is concern about workload, and again, it just replaces a particular section or various sections of the 29 triennial state building code that's going to be adopted anyway. It's not an additional requirement, it's an instead of. And so in terms of the plan checkers and the enforcement, instead of having a punch list of you have to do these things, A, B, C, D, it's you have to do QRF. And in terms of magnitude of work, it's pretty much the same thing, just, for example, it would be different from what a city that didn't adopt a REACH code or a city that adopted a different REACH code. Their plan checkers is going to be different as well than what was adopted here. So, sorry, this clicker is very sensitive. Whee! It doesn't like that slide. Obviously, it doesn't like that. Okay. Okay, so Peninsula Clean Energy, again, formed to decarbonize as fast as possible our electricity, and then where we can assist in decarbonizing society as a whole. We are really encouraging this to happen. As such, we are developing model codes right now for adoption. We are facilitating this with a host of consultants, and we are providing $10,000 to cities to apply to say we will develop REACH codes and bring them to council. They don't have to be approved by council, but we will do some of the work, and this is a reward in doing that. And it's an immediate grant. It's not a we'll pay you the money once you actually do the work. You send us the letter of intent, we will immediately send the check for $10,000. And again, we're doing adoption assistance when you actually go to integrate this language into the codes, and then also implementation. And that's that sort of check sheet when you go through and says, did you build an all-electric house? Well, okay, that's a really easy thing to check. Is there natural gas lines here? No. Okay, you're good. You did what you said you were going to do. And it's so much nicer, the air quality inside, and no kid got burned. Sorry, I have kids at home that, I don't know, everyone here I think has been burned by a stove before, but none of my kids have not. So, these are all our partners we have. TRC, that it's been developing state codes, is our lead technical consultant. We're also getting help from DNGVL, and we've got the Office of Sustainability as our lead partner, Rachel Launder. She was going to be here. She's unable to make it tonight. And we're working in parallel with Silicon Valley Clean Energy in Santa Clara to try to, in a way, to unify the codes across the two counties, but that's not really going to happen. But they are our partner in this. And to be quite honest, they're in a way taking the lead for building codes, and I'm taking the lead for the electric vehicle codes. So my expertise is not on the building code side. So again, and as part of this, we have to do what's called a cost-benefit approval. So to say that these REACH codes we're proposing are actually cost-effective, that long-term they don't cost a huge amount of money and will end up saving consumers money over time. For example, yes, putting more insulation in a building costs a little bit more up front, but the long-term savings because of the reduced energy bill may offset that, and there's a cost-benefit calculation that's involved. So timeline, here we are. We've been working on this since December of last year. We're right now looking for comments, feedbacks. This is exactly what Adrian's got and why we're here, to look at what we've proposed, what you guys have proposed, and put it together. And again, we all roll this together. In the fall, we'll submit the actual codes, proposed codes, to the CEC for their approval, and then January 1st, 2020, they go into effect. So when we talk about climate benefits, this is what we calculate. This is a rough estimate in terms of when you electrify a car, move to a all-electric car, and the actual savings depending on the size of the house or office or building, and so it adds up. Because these buildings are going to be around for 50 years, cars are around for 10 years. So the savings adds up over time in terms of greenhouse gas emissions or greenhouse gas reductions.
Wait,
So-
can you go back to that chart?
Uh-huh.
Could you explain, it says single family, 2 tons per 100 units, and then it says multifamily, 1 ton per 10,000 units?
No, it's 1 ton per 1,000 square feet. Yeah, times 10,000 units per year. So if 10,000 units were built across Santa Clara County of housing, which is not incredible, then the building's going to be in service for 50 years. So if we put an all-electric building versus a gas building, we're going to eliminate 1.5 million tons of CO2.
And why is it so much for an office? I mean, they don't have electrics. I mean, they don't have stoves. Is it heating or what?
Right. It's heating with natural gas and heating the water, but the primary mover there is heating the air to make it comfortable in here.
Okay, it just seems like the single family to multifamily ratio is a little bit skewed. 100 units of single family and 10,000 units of multifamily.
Right. Oh, this was an illustration
Okay.
to show. Again, it's not city specific in terms or county specific,
Okay.
but it's just to put things in perspective that this is a means to seriously reduce our emissions overall, plus provide safer, healthier buildings at the same time, and cost savings over the life of those buildings. Because again, these codes that we're proposing have to be cost effective. And as some of us would agree, more fun to drive, but we'll get there. So buildings. So this gets a little bit geeky in here in terms of building codes, but we can do this. So all electric buildings. So it's simply that, an all electric building. That means you have what's called a heat pump that generates both your warm air and your cold air. It's essentially a reverse air conditioning unit. So it uses one unit put into the system to concentrate outdoor heat and then move it into the house in the wintertime. So that essentially you put 1 unit of energy in, you get 3 units of heat put into the building, 3 to 5, depending on how this particular technology that you're using, versus a natural gas or mixed fuel where you would use 1 unit of natural gas, of heat worth of natural gas that generates 1 unit. So we're having this sort of wonderful multiplier effect on the electricity. So again, all electric is electric for the heating, for the cooling, and a heat pump to generate the hot water, electric induction stoves, and electric dryer as well. Okay, that's all electric. Then mixed fuel, and again, it's whatever you would like in terms of natural gas there, natural gas stove or natural gas and or dryer. Okay, so the compliance margin is there. It's a very complicated ranking system, but it's saying essentially how much more efficient are you going to require something to be above the standard state code. It's going to be 5% above the standard state code, 10% whatever, and there's a cost effectiveness component in there. And then when you talk about how we actually put codes in place, there's essentially 2 pathways. There's the performance that says your building should meet the state code, or it should be 10% more energy efficient than the state code. And what that would mean would be essentially potentially changing the window style, changing the insulation type, putting more insulation in the roof, things like that to meet this performance pathway, putting additional solar on. There's a number of things.
So, just moving to this chart in this column here,
Okay, so we're
the kind of blue column.
We're going to get to that slide at the end of the presentation.
Yes, I understand that, but I'm just trying to figure out if these percentages in this column refer to the
Exactly.
15% more.
more exactly. So what? And I'm going to skip to yes, exactly.
Got it.
And this is in the building electrification column, as this does not apply obviously to the electric vehicle side.
Right.
So when we talk about a building reach code, essentially we talk about that the compliance margin will either be equal to that of Title 20, the new Title 24, in other words, they don't have to do anything more, or a percentage better than Title 24, and that's what T24, and that's where all of our building standards come in, and there's a particular section on energy efficiency in Part 6, and there's a particular section on Cal Green, which talks about electric vehicle charging in Part 11, and our earthquake stuff and everything in between for buildings in Title 24. So again, there's two pathways to meet whatever your standards are, is to either go through this performance and you do a computer model that talks about how energy efficient your home is based on its geographic location, how it's oriented to the sun, how much insulation you put in, where the windows are oriented, a number of stories. All of that stuff gets put into this computer model, and that says you meet Title 24 or you don't meet Title 24. Go back and change something, and then you have to, again, depending if you enact a reach code, you have to be a certain percentage above the standard. And then again, the prescriptive means you have to do all these different technologies in terms of heat pump, water heaters, solar, battery backup, a whole bunch of things like that.
And this is all for brand new buildings or also remodels?
This is all, well, we are proposing Peninsula Clean Energy. This just addresses brand new construction, All right. You guys could set it for some level of modification, or, that's up to this. Again, that would be a reach code saying we're going to adopt this for any new, either any major modification. You could do that. So reach code. So again, what we're talking is the all-electric pathway versus a mixed fuel. And again, depending on the pathway, you can set it performance or prescriptive. But we're saying on the mixed fuel, because we can't simply say, nope, you can't install gas lines, you can't have gas coming to your house. In essence, we're just trying to make the all-electric choice the easiest one to pick. It's the most inexpensive to do and isn't burdened with more stringent energy efficiency requirements.
Maybe you were going to discuss this later, but why can't we just say, go electric?
Gosh darn it, those rascals in Berkeley and Arcata are doing just that, and there's the potential for a lawsuit. What they're saying is, so PG&E has a franchise. It's on my understanding that the city or the county has signed an agreement with PG&E allowing them to serve the customers with gas. But the way what they're looking at doing is saying you're either not allowed to install appliances that use natural gas, or you're not allowed to install natural gas piping. You can put natural gas appliances in there all you want, but you're not allowed to install piping within the building.
Had any gas in it. So.
Right, and those are options that are being explored right now by Berkeley and Arcata. So,
do you have any cities that offer both options?
what do you mean by offered both options?
Well, in the reach code options, you could choose option A or option B.
Right, and that's where we're getting to right now.
And each city would have, I mean, like our city, you could, as you're building a new house, you can choose option A or you can choose option B.
And that is exactly where we're going right now.
So that you could have all electric, or you could opt for mixed fuel plus the 10%.
I think you've reviewed my slides.
Oh, okay, no.
So to be clear, Michelle, what you're asking, the answer is yes, that is the state baseline code. All cities will have that.
What I mean, though, is can we put out there 2 reach code options?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so as you could,
Okay.
so what we're proposing right now, we're going to get, so again, as you see on the screen, we're saying we're offering the all-electric straight by Title 24. You don't have to do anything extra. You just make it all electric, and that is great. That's good enough for us. But if you're going to go and put in natural gas into your home, you're going to have to make it much more energy efficient.
Okay.
In other words, we're again, as my mother would say, we're trying to tie millstones around the neck of natural gas buildings. Or it's trying to make it as difficult as possible so that you would pick the all-electric option. So, for example, when we talk about the efficiency and the increase in construction costs and the emissions and the indoor air quality and all the equipment stuff, we're offering two pathways. The electric pathway, and pathway isn't, pathway is a word of art. It's really the electric choice, the all-electric choice. It's not a pathway. Yes, it is a pathway, but choice. And so we're saying we're not adding any burden to, you pick all electric, great. And on top of that, you don't have to have a carbon monoxide monitor. On the other hand, if you go down the mixed fuel choice of wanting natural gas, then we're saying you have to be, depending on the percentage picked, 70 to 29% higher than the state Title 24. So you have to put in a lot more insulation or triple pane windows or reorient your house so it captures more solar gain in the wintertime and reflects more heat in the wintertime, in the summertime. And the estimated cost increase in construction in doing that above baseline is $6,000 to $7,000. And of course, we already know, because we've seen that, the emissions are going to be worse. That when I talk about emissions, I mean CO2, and then the indoor quality is going to be worse because, again, you've got this natural gas combustion stove inside. Okay, and the equipment utilized is a heck of a lot more than, obviously, the all-electric, because you've got a gas connection, you've got a gas meter, you've got a gas furnace, you've got a gas water heater, and a carbon monoxide monitor. And then what we're saying on top of that is, because we know that these buildings are going to last for likely 50 plus years, and we know at some time the gas is going to go away because we cannot reduce our emissions where we need to be without getting saying goodbye to gas, then you have to have all the electric equipment in there to begin with, at least wired for having to be able to retrofit easier, to make the retrofit that much easier. Does that make sense? And again, this is a single family example. Mm-hmm. So when you compare what we're asking for from, this is a comparison from 2016 to 2019 to our proposal, you can see how the building codes have changed over time. Okay? So again, what we're saying on a mixed fuel, you're going to have to be more energy efficient, use more insulation, more windows than the all-electric. And again, they're only required to meet the standard 24, Title 24 standards. Nothing extra. So that's why the gas is all that much more expensive, the $7,000 more expensive. And again, this is all cost effective. It is being determined. We're not allowed to create a financial burden. That's why we could say, if you're going to put in mixed fuel, why not just make it double the standard, the state Title 24, because that would not be cost effective, and that would be an unfair penalty. So again, I think this slide is in a way the best of what we're proposing here. You as a builder, you have a choice. You can go the all-electric pathway, and you just adhere to Title 24. Nothing extra. If you are going to put in natural gas, then you have to do this extra work. And that extra work costs extra money for you as a developer. But you have that choice to do that. And we've done this to a weaker extent in Palo Alto, and the reason why we have somewhat pushback is because the developers, let's be honest, are not used to installing all electric yet. But there's this technology in Europe has been around for years. I've been living it since 2011, and we actually plumbed the house. We could talk about that later, but we plumbed the house for natural gas because we were scared that nothing was going to work. And about 6 years ago, I live in Palo Alto, I had the Palo Alto utility come out and take out the gas meter and shut it off. Because it worked. It works. It works. And again, my wife, the physician, she would argue that our house, is healthier and safer than the conventional gas house next door. And that's been backed up by studies. She would just say that anecdotally, that of course she feels her kids are alpha kids because of that. Before we're going to leave building codes, because this same example for single family dwelling, applies to multi-unit dwellings, and you can see that on your sheet. But rather than going through all the technicalities of what this means for multi-unit dwellings and office space and things like that, I'm just going to leave that be, because it's what's important here is the concept, which is essentially if you're building all electric, we are not going to penalize you by adding extra things to do to meet Title 24. But if you are going mixed fuel, then we are going to add things that you have to do, because we know that that's a huge amount of emissions that you have potential to emit. And we're also going to prepare you for later on to actually be able to retrofit. So, electric vehicle charging, I like this, build it and they will come, in that if you don't have charging, if you don't have an outlet where you live, particularly in a multi-unit dwelling, it's really hard to sort of think about buying or leasing an electric vehicle, even though there are a large number of charging stations in the public space. We like the familiarity and the regularity of plugging in at one place, be it work or at home, on a daily basis or every couple of days, versus having to go and essentially use the gas station model. Though that is going to start happening soon too, as we get into much longer range cars than what we've historically had. For example, this car in the picture has a range of about 120 miles, and you can buy a Tesla right now with 370 miles of range, and the new sedan coming out will have 700 miles of range. So things are advancing, but for the lay person, those cars are, the Teslas new are, $80,000 plus vehicles. So for these type vehicles, again, they're affordable. They've got 200 miles of range, but we need somewhere to charge. Who here has an electric car? Okay, so where do you charge?
At home.
Okay, and do you like that?
Yeah.
Why?
Convenient for my wife. She's the one who primarily drives it, and her normal habit was to just run out of fuel, so it kind of helps prevent that.
My wife would ditto your wife's comments. For her, the electric car is extremely convenient because she never has to go to the gas station, and the fueling station that she has to go to is always open, and there's never a queue, and there's sometimes a kid to actually plug it in for her. So, Barbara, where do you charge?
We charge primarily at home.
Yeah, for same reasons?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you just put the car in the garage, you plug it in, you walk away. It's ready the next morning.
Yeah, exactly. So, the California Cal Green Codes is what governs EV charging. Again, is contained within Title 24 in a separate chapter. It doesn't need to go through the same rigor in terms of cost effectiveness that the building codes do. When we look at adoption rates for San Mateo County compared to the rest of California, or certainly the more rural parts of California, we are way ahead of the pack. We have over 8% of new car sales are electric vehicles. Now, while that's not Norway, which it is at over 50%, that's much higher than the rest of here. There's other parts of the Bay Area that are on par with that, same other parts of Los Angeles, but in general, that's not usual for Fresno. It will be soon, because they're going to soon be getting EV pickup trucks and things like that, and the price does keep falling. But when we look at the statistics, we see 36% of the population, not that they just don't know about it, they know about EVs and they think that's going to be their next vehicle. Yes?
Are you seeing any correlation with EVs in relation to carpool lanes that allow EVs?
In terms of HOV, taking up the HOV space?
Well, I mean that I've known a lot of people who decided to go with an electric vehicle because of access to high occupancy vehicle.
Yes. It's for all those reasons. It depends, on the individual. Some people, it's just strictly to get the We have a woman in our sister office who has to drive from Oakland, and she is looking at selling her car because the silver stickers are no longer good. For her, it was that purchase, but she's going to get another EV. And she's, because both of the HOV sticker and because of the convenience we've talked about. Yeah. So there's all sorts of reasons why people get EVs. They're cheaper.
I just didn't know if you noticed higher percentage of EVs in areas.
Oh, I see what you're saying, where there are HOV lanes to take advantage of if you have an EV. I got it.
Like how much of a carrot is that?
It's really hard because all the places that have the EVs do have a higher density of people that drive them, but is that economics that they also have likely more wealth, that they're likely better educated, that there's other features there. We've got only a limited data set that I can share with you if you want on why we had a program last fall giving $1,000 to San Mateo residents that got EVs, and the data was all across the board in terms of environmental cost, HOV stickers. It was all across the board as to why they got their EV. Speed, joy of driving. Sorry? Speed.
Never
Yeah.
thought of EV and speed.
No, they have much higher acceleration rates.
Heck
They're
yeah.
fast.
Yeah, well, that's
Like, where did that?
Well,
Yeah. Or even,
you can watch the gauge as you do that. You just watch the battery gauge just sort of drop.
it depends again what sort of.
Same thing with gas.
Well, right, but electric vehicles are more subtle. Like, so we have a Chevy Volt. It's a gas electric hybrid, and I mean, we fill it up maybe once a year. It very rarely ever uses the gas engine, but
So I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Did you say you fill up your car with gasoline once a year?
right. I mean, it does have an engine, and it does occasionally get used, or it'll just start itself because it needs to occasionally run. So we fill up maybe once a year. I mean, I think my wife filled up a few more times this year because she drove to LA and back, and that you can just drive it like a normal car. But when I drive it, I can get probably 40 to 45 miles out of a charge before it starts the engine. When my wife drives it, she gets 25, maybe 30 at the most because she treats the throttle as digital. So there's a huge, penalty to.
She might argue that she has more fun driving.
Oh, I'm sure. I guarantee you she does. I guarantee you she does.
So just so to clarify, he has what's called a plug-in hybrid. Then he has the best plug-in hybrid, a Chevy Volt with a V that gets 50 miles roughly of all electric range, and then it switches to an internal combustion engine unless he's climbing steep hills when the engine will occasionally kick on as well. And again, depending on how you drive it, will affect your all-electric range as part of that. And
We don't notice that very much with our Leaf. A little bit, but not a lot.
yeah.
I mean, I can drive it, if I'm rushing, it doesn't seem to make a huge difference. A little.
We'll have Christine drive it and see what happens.
Okay.
But
We, as part of the house tour, we're going to actually do an electric vehicle ride and drive because we'll have more time then in the road. It'll hopefully be dry. What's that?
as long as I get to drive.
Absolutely. I get feathers in heaven for every person that drives my car.
Aw, yay heaven.
So, adoption about EVs. So, again, we've seen this much higher adoption rate in San Mateo County, and since roughly 30 to 40% of our overall emissions are due to transportation, everything we can do to electrify, because again, when we electrify, we go from 20 pounds of carbon dioxide out the tailpipe per gallon of gasoline burned to 0. So that's a heck of a lot of yogurt tubs to recycle to keep up with that sort of savings.
now, is that assuming that all of our power is coming from carbon neutral sources? Because I know we still get some power from natural gas around here.
So by the time these codes are adopted, PCE will be all electric. It won't be 100%, I'm sorry, all electric. It'll be 100% carbon
Renewable.
free, but it won't be 100% renewable. That's coming later. Okay, but it will be, we've got large dams is included in the mix, and wind power and solar, but not all large dams are considered renewable.
So that means there's no use of natural gas peaking plants or anything?
Correct. Or they will be offset as time goes on
Got it,
and
okay.
reduced. We're actually trying to get our renewable generation to coincide with actual use, and that's a 2026 goal and a pretty steep one, and will involve batteries and things like that. But the point here is that if we really want to reduce our carbon footprint, the fastest, best, most fun way, convenient, money saving is to get into an electric car.
Absolutely.
And we are seeing those adoption rates that agree with that statement happening in the county right now. And what's stopping us is the availability of chargers at your home and the workplace. So as we go through this, I want to, for the non-EV drivers, I want to go through what all the sort of the language of EV drivers. And Barbara, if you want to do this part of the presentation, I'm happy. Or you want to do it since we're in the know. But in essence, if I could get my car through the doors, I can charge right now. So I am plugged in at level 1. You can see the little green light. And what this provides me is 3 to 4 miles per hour. It all depends. I've forgotten your name, sir.
Ross.
Ross. It depends if Ross's wife or Ross is driving, because we just saw that Ross's wife gets less fuel efficiency but has more
fun. Yes.
Has more fun in the car. Okay, so this I'm plugged in right now to a simple wall outlet. So that's level 1. Now you'll note that this cord is actually stiffer than a normal extension cord. It's more like a dryer cord that you'd have on the back of a dryer, or you'd have a back on an electric stove. That's because this cord I can unplug that level 1 outlet connector, male connector, and put on a male level 2 connector. So when I plug this into the equivalent of a dryer outlet or a stove outlet, much bigger, you can see the pins, then it provides electricity to my car. In terms of range, the amount of power it provides is 20 to 30 miles per hour. Okay? And again, this is so when we talk about something called EV ready, plug and play, we're saying just install the outlet and the associated wiring, and we will come along and just plug in and be able to charge. We're calling that EV ready or plug and play. Now, EV capable, when you're talking about construction, essentially means some assembly required. We're not going to require you to put all the wiring in general, or if it's a parking garage, we're going to make sure there's conduit between the two levels, between the cement, because that's the most expensive thing, to bore through the cement, and we'll just put in the conduit mounted on the wall later and run the wiring later. So there's two sort of terms here. EV ready, I'm calling that plug and play. You're just ready to plug it straight in and off you go. You're able to charge right then and there. And then EV capable means you're going to have to do some work later on, but the really critical pinch points have been addressed already. So as part of that, if this was plugged into the wall and this was public into a dryer outlet, this would be considered a electric vehicle supply equipment, because all I do at this point is actually just go ahead and plug this into the car. And because this is a Tesla, it looks like this. The other ones are called a J1772 and slightly different. That's all.
So when you say 25 to 30 miles per hour of charging?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, as you can see, the level 1 it's a lot less electricity. It's much smaller wire. It's just a wall outlet. But again, if you have that and your commute is only 20 miles and you plug it in when you get home for 10 hours, you've got 30 to 40 miles of range immediately. Ross, that's what you do, right?
Yeah, just plug it in every night.
Yeah, at level 1 or level 2?
No, level 2. I installed an EVSE.
Oh, you installed
We have
EVSE?
friends with electric cars if they come over. I mean, the Volt only takes 4 hours or so to charge. Tesla would take a lot longer than that, but
We'll get
that
again.
way, if you're home for a few hours, you charge it up, you go out again, you come back. It was convenient to put it in a level 2.
Mhm. So the Chevy Volt takes both the level. All electric cars take the level 1 and the level 2. It's typically more expensive to install level 2 wiring, level 2 breaker capacity, things like that. But this is sort of our terms. So why are we pushing for REACH codes right now at the point of installation or building construction? Simply because it's so cost effective. It is crazy expensive to retrofit later. It's wicked cheap to throw conduit, breaker capacity, all of that now at the time of construction. So, and this is particularly important when a parking garage costs between $25,000 and $35,000 per parking space in a parking garage, either built underground or a decked parking lot. So these costs are not crazy to do when you're talking $1,000 to $2,000 to install the electric vehicle charging equipment at the time of construction. So what are we proposing? So right now, for a single family home, that you would have that level 2 outlet, plug and play, and that you'd have an additional level 1 or another 110 outlet dedicated to for electric vehicle charging, with a little sign above it that says for EV charging or some such nice language like that. In a multi-unit dwelling, like an apartment or condo, for a small or medium unit, each unit, not parking space, each unit gets a level 2 plug and play. In other words, we're not requiring them to actually have the electric vehicle charging station, but just have an outlet, a level 2 outlet that the residences can plug into. For much larger developments, we're saying 25% level 2 and 75% level 1, so that each unit has their own outlet to charge from. Okay, we're not denying anyone charging space, and it's there from the get-go. And why we're doing this, particularly in places where your home, is because your home is your castle, and that's where most people do want to charge. And what we've seen is when we do things like require apartments and condos to be EV capable, that people forget that conduit is there for a reason, for EV charging, then it never actually gets installed. So we're just saying from the beginning, it's not hugely expensive. Go ahead and make every unit have access to power.
So how do they work out paying for it? Does that run, do they have to run extra lines to put it on each unit's meter, et cetera, et cetera?
So that isn't.
And the same thing with, buildings, et cetera.
Right, so that's an excellent question. So there are all sorts of means to do billing. So what we've seen in Palo Alto land, because they have an ordinance that says doesn't matter the size of your multi-unit dwelling, everybody gets a level 2 charger. And so on the small units, small and medium units, in terms of under 25, 30, they've just wired it back to the unit's meter. So it's just in terms of simplicity. And in San Francisco, when they enacted a similar type ordinance, there was actually a group of home developers that developed condos and said, we want this to be a requirement that it goes back to each unit in terms of the billing. But you don't have to do it that way. There's lots of billing systems that independently monitor and meter each EV charger, and you walk up there with essentially a credit card, not to swipe, but a credit card to tap, like an RFID card. In fact, I've got one.
That's okay.
You've got one, a charge point. Do you use charge point?
Mhm.
Okay, so
I understand that part.
yeah, so you just walk up and this says it's Sven, and okay. So it's lots of means to do that, and the technology is changing right now. Mm-hmm. Also, you can do things like if it's a level 1 outlet and that's your level 1 outlet, apartment complexes have dog and pet monthly fees. You'd have an EV charger fee. You can take as much as you want, but you're paying this set fee per month, and you can be as specific as it's based on a Chevy Bolt and your driving ranges and things like that. There are lots of options out there. The point is, without an outlet, you have no place to charge. You're very, very unlikely to get an EV. So for non-residential buildings, we are doing a mix of actually having the chargers installed, because again, when you see the chargers, you go, I can charge there. So for example, if it's a workplace, there'll be a certain number of chargers. That's 10%. Then 10% will actually have just a regular outlet where you can go and plug in, just like that one over there, 3 to 4 miles per hour. And then it depends if it's on grade parking lot, which means it's a field, it's at ground level, or if it's a parking deck or a parking complex, because wiring in parking decks above or below ground is much easier than trenching the whole parking lot, and we'll get into the specifics here. But this is essentially the summary, and the goal here again is to provide access to power, and the amount of power we're providing is a balance in terms of not requiring a huge excess amount of electricity, but enough to do your Monday through Friday commute in terms of level 1.
Seems like for a non-residential building, 10% isn't very much.
It isn't a huge amount, but we've got 10% level 2 actually installed, 10% level 1, so that's 20%, and then depending on the parking deck, 50% of it, if it's a flat land, 50% of it is plumbed for future EV charging deployment.
It seems like this would be the low-hanging fruit because these are people who are actually driving their car to get to work, and it would seem like we would want it to be a higher percentage.
Ma'am, I am not going to disagree with that. I'm trying to strike a balance between developers that say this is adding extra money and Tesla who would side with you.
Well, but
in
there's
terms
also
of
the
level of
fact that
charging.
if, depending on how many you have wired out initially, that dictates the size of your main service, which brings all sorts of other considerations in. And for a large installation, if you're right on the edge between just hooking up to utility power or needing to drop into transformer because they're bringing in 480 or 4 kV, something else like that, that can be a huge jumping cost.
Well, what's a huge jumping cost when you're building a huge building?
My father-in-law is having to do an upgrade in his building, and the difference between not putting in a transformer and putting in a transformer is close to $200,000. So,
Because I'm thinking more,
and
I
that's
mean,
in
this is
Arizona,
on
it's
new
cheaper.
construction.
No, I mean that's it. It can be very expensive to have to do that, and if you get pushed over the edge because you're assumed you're everything that if you add up everything that you have connected or could possibly have connected, the utility will say, well, that changes your service type. You have to have this, or you'll have to put in a pad, transformer, all this other stuff. Versus, no, your consumption will be low enough that we don't have to make any modifications. So there's a huge. That's I imagine why some developers wouldn't want to go past this is just because it may push you into a different category, and there's concern about the cost or simply not being able to get the permit to hook it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm personally not terribly concerned about it because most people choose to charge at home. But there are people who are probably commuting more on who are commuting from out further distances who are maybe on the edge of their range that will need to do some charging at work. But a lot of times level 1 is okay for that. Not always. But if Peninsula Clean Energy has kind of run the numbers and they think that this is what's going to be good, then I'm personally willing to roll with it for now.
Yeah. I feel like it's relatively good. We're getting beaten up by both sides of the developers and by Tesla and other EV advocates. So that says we've picked a reasonable, a medium middle path.
Good for you.
I don't know, it just seems like you said that the thing that was the limiting factor on people adopting EVs is ability to charge.
Yeah, access to
And
charging.
at that point, I would think that we would address this stronger than whether or not I have a gas stove.
Yeah. I would, what I would love if you would do this sort of thing in major retrofits.
Yeah,
That
I would be.
That would be a better in terms of that might
Absolutely.
be a more a bigger lever because you'll affect much more housing and our sort of thought with the
But the cost for
Can I chime in here just for a minute? So I know some of you have peeked ahead at the handout that I gave you that is towards the end of Sven's slide, maybe one of the last ones. But we have talked about this at staff and kind of modified the proposal a little bit further. And we also agreed that we would like to go a little bit farther. So I think maybe we can continue this conversation more when we get to that kind of proposal, rather than talking about it for a while now and having to go back over it all again in a few minutes.
Okay, thanks, Adrian.
Yes.
Just one consideration in connection with that I'll mention, that is a lot of businesses are now considering electric delivery vehicles and things like that.
Yeah, that's good.
So they, if they want to charge those on site, which of course they obviously would, that kind of argues for pushing it out a little bit.
Good point, Glenn.
Yeah, no, I'm gosh darn it, I'm excellent. That's all I can say. So, what we're as part of this is trying to put things into perspective to where California as a whole is. So you can see right here that where this is what would be required as part of Title 24 that was required in 2016 and 2019. And again, they're EV capable. So again, you would run the conduit, but not the actual wiring. And we say, forget that. We want 2 spaces, plug and play, ready to go from the get-go. And again, that's we're already seeing families with 2 electric cars, and so this enables you to charge both of them essentially at the same time, slightly different rates. Then on the multifamily, it's pretty poor overall. EV capable again means there's no plug and play ability there, and we're just not this is for all of California. We're just not seeing that. So we are again, our threshold right now is 40 units. We're actually thinking of lowering that to 20. To again, that's 1 level 2 per dwelling, and for the large greater than 40, again 25% level 2, 75% level 1. Again, everybody gets access to power without putting an undue burden on the actual condominium or apartment complex. And the way we look at this is as a basement type code that again, you guys are welcome to do more, and the developer is obviously welcome to do more. If they're building a high-end apartment complex, they're likely to go a level 2 per unit, just like Palo Alto. That's a Palo Alto code right now, and a Menlo Park code as well.
There's a lot of buildings in San Francisco that are being built with less parking, less than 1 parking space per unit. And yet, who knows how that's going to pan out.
Oh,
and in
that's
that
ideal.
case, I
Doesn't
mean, it
mean-
should be adjusted that every single parking unit should be.
Right.
Because
We would write the language.
Doesn't matter.
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
percentage doesn't matter. It's,
Ex-
it's
yeah.
the
So-
ratio to units.
Exactly. We
25%, so
would
if it
write
was-
that it would still be 75% level 1, 25% level 2. Interesting. If I wish I had the statistics on that, because if there's a fewer number of parking spaces than units, we'd probably like to up the percentage level 2 if people have to move cars around and things like that.
Absolutely. And
Not
when
a
we're
bad idea.
looking at, the development that's about to take place on the Baylands, where if it is near transit, they might not have to do as many units of parking, per
Yeah.
unit.
Yeah,
Of,
I don't think that's been.
Somebody was even talking about doing a parking-free development, or, there'd be no.
well, then we don't have to worry about
So,
it. But I don't
Well,
think that's.
I
gonna
don't think
happen.
that's going to happen.
yeah,
So-
Okay.
Yeah.
So
No, I like
we
the
need to
idea
really
if they have
do that.
fewer parking spots than units. I like the idea of having a greater percentage being EV ready
Or
capable,
every one of
or already
Level 2.
level 2 ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because again, you're not going to need to bring in as much power because it's power based on per unit, so it'd be less there.
And they're already
Parking
getting
space.
a break with not having to build that amount of parking.
$30,000 per parking space break.
Yeah.
So, again, this is for the non-residential. So 10%, you actually have the chargers installed, ready to go from day 1 at level 2, and then a bunch of 10% outlets. And again, we're saying what Ross was correct. We're saying a certain amount of power left on the panel, and again, conduit in the pinch points, so that later on we're EV capable now. We can make it very easily EV ready with the outlets, the actual outlets to plug and play. And again, that depends on whether it's above ground or at grade. And you can see how low the California overall standards are here. And again, compared to Palo Alto and Menlo Park, these numbers are lower, but not crazy lower than Palo Alto's. I don't remember the exact statement Palo Alto has for their non-residential. So, to summarize, the REACH codes, as we talked about, they preserve the lowest cost option when it comes to buildings, and it encourages healthier, safer buildings overall, and it gets our EV adoption rates able to provide power to those wanting to adopt. Millions of tons of CO2 avoided, and again, by mandating, if you are going to put in gas, that you wire for electricity for your future retrofit.
What do you mean by avoids stranded assets?
So if you put in electricity and we come to the climate crisis gets worse and worse and worse, and we say we're not going to supply gas because of the climate crisis after 2035, and you've put in a gas furnace that lasts for 20 years, you're not going to get your full 20 years worth of value of that asset.
Got it.
Just like right now, we're asking coal plants to shut down before their normal retirement date. Although that's a false statement. We're asking them to retire earlier because renewables are so much cheaper than burning coal in old plants.
Mhm.
So, what are the next steps? To submit your letter of intent for the $100,000.
$10,000.
I wish it was 100,000, but we've already submitted one for 10.
Right, exactly. So, which is done, and then do exactly what we're doing right now, is to develop a sort of what we call reach code measures, which is what this is. It's not in code language, but it's a series. It's a proposals, easily understandable. It's draft. That's what we're doing right now, and then share this with your developers, share this with your citizenry, share this with your commissions. To say this is what we proposed, this is what PCE proposed, this is what California Title 24 proposed. We like this one because we are here. This is our local choice because of who we as a citizenry, as a body politic are. And then May 31st, we'll be releasing actual code language for what we've developed. And then you can take that and modify that for actual, real, formal legal adoption, and then it goes to the CC for approval, and again, January 1st it all goes into effect.
Are you doing outreach to developers to talk to them about this stuff?
We're doing outreach to developers, we're doing outreach to low-income housing developers, but it's not, I'll be honest, we would wish, we've got a whole website dedicated to this process. We would wish that there would be more comments and more participation.
It seems to me, especially for the building, there's been so much building. I understand Brisbane, we have an impending building that is coming on soon, maybe. But all the building that's going on in the Bay Area, we seem to be completely behind the 8 ball because the building's done. I mean, 10 years or 2020. Can they put any more building all over the peninsula?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They'll tear down something else.
I mean, besides the Baylands.
Yeah,
No, that's what they're doing. They're tearing down buildings and
Well,
buildings.
the whole El Camino corridor, for example, there's a lot of low-density stuff along
Oh.
El Camino that's just ready for, massive.
It just seems like
Lots
there's
of
been so much, and
they're
who
just-
knows what's going on with the economy in the next 2, 3, 10, 5, 10 years.
Like Ross said, they're shredding all the stuff along the rail.
Yeah, and
rail train.
usually, the next time the economy crashes is when developers that have money snap stuff up and start building.
True.
So once the Baylands is developed, it's around here. It's probably going to be the El Camino corridor. Will be the focus, which is nice because that's right along Caltrain.
Actually, developers are really good at predicting crashes because when you see new housing stop, you know the economy is going to crash very soon.
Yep.
They'll
But
buy, but they
Won't
won't
have anything
build.
to do with the stock market. They just went down 640 points. But.
So
Anyway,
I have another question.
enough of that.
On the non-residential, I don't suppose we can affect anything of what's already in progress? Or
No.
No. It's like all those buildings that are being built out at Sierra Point, we cannot.
No, they've already been entitled.
Yeah.
To
So
it.
the good news is it's better than nothing, right? At least they're subject to the 2016 Cal Green Code, so 6%.
Some are, some aren't. If
Oh.
they had vested tentative rights prior to that, they're not.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm assuming they were built since or permitted after 2016.
Is there any way to, because I know occasionally they come back and want to revise plans, is there any way to say, well, okay, we give this, you can have this revision, but
I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I think we'd have to talk with the community development department about that. I will note that the development at Sierra Point, when we were having a discussion with planning about what we wanted to see staff proposal on this, we did talk about that building is installing a certain number of chargers, and I think it worked out to be about 7.5% or 8%. So they're above that 6%, and it was a pretty good number of charging stations.
I mean, with the 5 buildings that are being built.
Yeah.
Still not
So, here is this the modified slide?
Yes.
Okay, so here we are. I think it's best for you to come up as well and to discuss
I'll
this.
go ahead and stay here, but I
Okay.
will
Okay.
go ahead and walk through this. And I'm actually thinking maybe we're going to go from the right side left because we've just been talking about the EV stuff, and we'll kind of move backwards. So so just kind of to catch everybody up. Staff has been looking at this and participating in a number of the events and webinars that Peninsula Clean Energy and their coalition have been hosting over the last number of months. And so we've put together this based on their kind of recommendations, our understandings of what we are allowed to do per the cost effectiveness studies, and tried to use shortened language to fit it all into a one-page summary here. Good point, Karen. We've also been talking with San Mateo, which is another city that is participating in this effort and very serious about it. So we've had some kind of conversations with them as well to see where we're aligned. So on the electric vehicle charging infrastructure side, with the single family or duplex and small multifamily, we are suggesting 1 level 2 EV ready space per unit. On the large multifamily side, 50% EV ready, a level 2 EV ready, plus the remainder would be EV capable. So basically 100% of the parking spaces would be EV capable. That could ultimately at some point have that infrastructure added. And then with those load sharing and parking type considerations that Sven mentioned. So depending on whether you're talking about on-grade parking versus underground or deck parking, we would have some considerations for what was required there that would probably align with what PCE is outlining. And then the load sharing to be sure that we're not putting an enormous electrical requirement on these new buildings so that they can use that load sharing, load management. And then on the non-residential side, we are recommending 10% level 2 EVSE installed, another 40% EV ready, so that's your level 2, your dryer outlets, so you get basically 50% of your spaces are level 2, and then again the remainder that are going to be EV capable with those load sharing and parking type considerations. So before I move on, questions about that? Do we want to discuss at that level before we move on to the building energy stuff?
I'm
Yeah.
good.
Just a comment, I'd recommend kicking up the commercial a little bit for the reasons that I said. And I think, I don't know if you've done any studies of this, but you say that having the EV there and ready to go encourages people to adopt. And I just wonder if some businesses might say, oh, yeah, we'll go for our electric delivery van or something if it was all there and ready to go in the first place.
So you're suggesting a higher percentage of EVSE installed?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
did you have a
maybe.
particular number in mind?
15%.
15?
Yeah.
How does the rest of the group feel about that?
Yeah.
If I may put my or PCE's 2 cents in, if we had statement, we would like on the large multifamily to actually have it 100% EV ready, but that remainder 50% be at a lower power supply to answer Ross's concerns. The whole point being we have anecdotal evidence that when you make it EV capable, no one knows 5 years in that you actually can put more EV chargers in, and it's an added cost and it's an inconvenience, and the multi-unit dwelling owner is much more concerned about other things than adding EV charging at the time. It's just simpler, faster, easier to do it at the time. I'm not suggesting that it be, I'm mildly recommending it be Palo Alto's, which is 1 level 2 unit charger per unit, but I would much rather have everybody have access to power. That's the most important thing than have it at everybody have high power. I will let that go in a heartbeat to make sure that the 5 of us over here come home and we plug in. You two, you have no idea that where the two floors meet, there's a big PVC pipe that's just waiting for wiring to come through, but you don't know that. All you know is you don't have charging, and we 5 do. And so that's where I would, if there could be an amendment, that's where I would strongly put it. And again, I don't mind at what level of power that is, just that everyone in the unit has access to power.
Yeah, I agree with that for both large and small multifamily.
I think that's definitely worth considering. I think there is some consideration that we've been trying to make to the cost. So I think that is something we'll have to probably take back and discuss further. I think also when I was thinking about with the level 2 versus level 1 proposal, I know if it were me and I was in a multifamily unit and I was one of the people who got stuck with the level 1 instead of the level 2, I'd be darn pissed.
Yep.
So I see your point. Everyone should have access. There's a little carrot or whatever you call that symbol there. And that was something that we wanted to really think about or figure out a way. We haven't done so yet or had that conversation really yet. But to think about how the parking was arranged to see whether those 50% EV ready would actually allow 100% coverage if you have, you know, an outlet next to 2 spots or something like that. So I think, you know, I hear your point, and I think we can talk about that more, but I think we need to weigh kind of all of those factors, and those were some of the things that we were thinking about when we were coming up with this proposal.
We're getting cost numbers next week, and they're
next
bordering.
week? I thought not till July.
Yeah, the cost numbers for the EV for laying wiring and things like that, and I've already got a draft version, and so to put in again, this is a generic level 1 charger outlet panel capacity. It's around $800 per parking space, and to put in a level 2, it's closer to $1,050. So there's not a huge price difference between the two of them, and I would definitely like to work with you on making sure that each unit has access to power, because again, it's your castle, and having to share, so to speak, we don't always do well.
I really think it should include the small multifamily as well, because 3 to 16 units.
Well, we're already planning 1 level 2 EV ready space per unit for small multifamily is already what we're proposing.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that'll cover it.
And there's that issue of whether parking is assigned or not. If it's not, then everyone can have access.
Well, then
it's a
then
first
you're
come,
using
first
charge
serve.
points or something like that.
Yeah, so if you're always working late, you'll never get a chance at one of those outlets.
Yeah.
Working from home.
Extension cord out a window
I have pictures of people doing that.
all over San Francisco.
Out the window.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. How else are you going to do it?
yeah. It's level 1, 3 miles an hour, and that's all they need, and they are perfectly happy running out of a 2nd-story window. Great, anyway.
It's all they need, or that's all they can get.
It enables them to have the critical thing. It enables them to have that electric car. So are we? Again, I guess I'm in. I'll take everything that I can get, but
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel. Like, you know, something that's really important to me to emphasize through all of this is we've had pushback from somebody who thought we shouldn't have done the 1 kilowatt system on roof because it was an undue burden on homeowners. But all I really can keep saying is that they do these cost analysis studies, and yes, it's money up front, but it's been we don't have these reach codes unless it's been shown that it saves the homeowner money over time. And so whatever I will on this reach code, I will take whatever the numbers bear. If the numbers say we can have 1 EV level 2 charger installed per unit, I will take that. You know, and if it says I will take whatever the math says. Just give it to me. I will sign on to it.
So when you compare Ross's Chevy, it's a Volt to I can't remember, it's Toyota Camry, I believe. it's about a $1,300 a year savings, and that's at gas prices at $3.65 a gallon. Yeah, so yeah, it's going to be so in terms of the cost benefit ratio. Again, with our high adoption rates, these payback periods are relatively short.
If you charge at home and you avoid time of use rates, it's very cost effective. I mean, I don't think anyone does this, but if you charge entirely with, say, just ChargePoint, that's actually less cost effective than burning gasoline. If you're dealing with the PG&E C rates, we're for whatever reason we still have tiered. We're not time of use. I don't know why. It's the C rate, even though we still charge. It would be cheaper just to hit the button and burn gasoline than actually to charge. So there is still the cost of power to consider. But generally, charging at home, especially if you're plugging in at night, very cost effective.
And there's much less maintenance and things like that because there's fewer. There's no oil changes. There's no smog checks. There's no, well, there is an alternator, but there's no catalytic converter. Any of that stuff.
It's really hard to remember to rotate your tires because you don't have to do anything else.
The only reason why we go to a gas station is to wash the windows.
Yeah, when this one wears out.
Yeah.
So, and I would argue that the sooner it's like having a cell phone or a computer, the sooner you make the move, the better you are off, the longer you're going to have to enjoy it, especially if you have a lead foot like I do. So, may we move on to buildings?
Yes, please, sir.
Okay. So again, we're 2 seconds or
Go for it.
okay. So it's fairly easy here. Again, I feel like we've been over this. We have to allow 2 pathways. One is the all electric. That is base Title 24. You don't have to do anything extra than the state code requires, and it's all electric. Now, if you opt to put in a gas something because you are a builder and for the last 20 years you have sensibly put in gas appliances and gas heaters and gas water heaters, and this is what you know, then you are going to have to pay for that in terms of building the building much more energy efficient, and you're going to have to pre-wire that building so that in the future we can take that gas appliance out and very easily plug and play, hopefully put in the electric version. So that's the objective right there, and that same thing applies for all these different descriptions here. And the reason why the percentages differ is because of these cost effectiveness calculations that we had to go, or the TRC had to go through with the state. We can't make them more stringent than this. In a way, it's a very prescribed model. The law is very clear here on what we can and can't do. And here's the fun thing. You guys can very simply say, you're not allowed to install gas piping in our city.
Yeah.
That's a good point, actually.
Think about it.
That's
They
our
really
opportunity.
shouldn't on the Baylands. They
That would
shouldn't
be
be allowed to.
PG&E can run their pipes out there all they want, but you can't put in natural gas piping in our buildings. Or you could also say you can't put natural gas combustion appliances in our buildings.
Shouldn't.
And
Yeah,
that's outside of Title 24. And again, this is what Berkeley and Arcata are looking at. But that's, and if you wanted to do it, the time would be now. In terms of, again, it gets in your building code professionals, your city staff don't have to learn anything new because they have to learn everything new right now because Title 24 is changing. It's all changing. You're just saying change.
Learn this.
Just instead of it'd be funny if you said no gas appliances because they'd have a big section of all these gas laws that they wouldn't have to deal with and just say no gas.
Yeah, no, that would be the best bang for the buck. Would be the Baylands, because
Yeah. Well, it
that
makes
is
sense.
once that's
anyway.
done, 75% of the population of Brisbane will live there.
Yeah.
So one thing that I really want to point out as we're having this discussion is that this is a floor for all of current and future Brisbane new buildings and
Correct.
probably significant renovations or retrofits. That's still kind of TBD. The Baylands will have a separate developer agreement that additional considerations will be, discussed through that process. So I want you guys to think about this as not what can we get out of the Baylands, as what makes sense for us to put into a REACH code that would apply to everyone in Brisbane.
Yeah, no, I wasn't thinking of it as what we could get out of the Baylands. I mean, I think
All
I've always thought that whatever applies to the Baylands should apply to Brisbane too. I mean, we're trying to
Yeah.
keep this as a whole, this community. So, yeah.
Okay.
What?
So
Go ahead.
I was just going to kind of go through some of the percentages. And
I was just going to ask about the expectation percentage of adoption. I mean, what do you anticipate?
Well, if it's the ordinance, it'll be 100% adoption.
Right, so a developer has to do one or the other. They're gonna either choose we can't require them to pick the all-electric
But you
pathway.
don't have any idea. You kind of have some idea. What have you talked to developers? You said you aren't getting enough.
So there's a whole, so I'm on a listserv for pro-electric developers that love this because they recognize the safety and the healthier, and they crow that as part of their development, that their homes are safer and more healthy and modern and interconnected and have electric vehicle all that.
Yeah.
They're taking the Volvo approach of talking about safety as being this is one of their big features. So one of their big features, they don't actually go talk about environmental stuff. They talk more about healthy and safety of their homes, as opposed to the low. There's a little bit of low carbon footprint, and there's again, your run-of-the-mill developer is probably right now on teetering between one or the other, and will look much more at the cost of it, hopefully. But again, so I don't know, but unfortunately, based on what happened in 2016 in Palo Alto, and this is anecdotal evidence, because of the fear of induction stoves, that that everybody wanted gas, that on a stove they put a lot more gas in than they had to, because the perception is that people that convention. The perspective is that giving up gas means you give up that lovely instant on, instant off. And I would argue on induction, I actually have it better than that, and I have wicked easy cleanup. And so that's why, again, the next agenda item is coming to my house to see this. And
Right.
who have some people who had the induction stove?
From work.
From work.
One of our tenants just bought two, and so I haven't even seen them. I know they've been working on them yet, but it's only been a week, 2 weeks, maybe.
If they cook with oil, have them put either a piece of cloth between the quote-unquote burner and the pot, or a piece of paper to catch the splatters.
It's impressive. Now, my folks, they very oddly for Texas, they went all electric to be environmental, and they put in an inductive range, a pretty sizable one. I think it's got a 50 or 60 amp feed to it, and it works fantastically. And
Can you
I'm one of
can
those
on
people
an
that you'll have
induction
to buy
stove?
my gas stove for my.
What, you mean boil
Can you
water?
do canning?
Yeah, I mean, so the way my parents did canning in North Carolina is you take a pot of water, 1/3 full of boiling water, and put a bunch of individual jars in there to heat them up. Yes, and again, what Ross said is correct. The induction stove throws out. We would like that 15-year-old to do some science experiments and to boil a pot of pasta. We'll know the volume of the water. We'll take the weight of the pasta, and we'll see how long it takes to come to a boil. And then we'll repeat the experiment at my house, and we'll do it in Texas too, to see which comes to a boil first. And I would argue that likely because we've done this before, that likely the induction will. But I don't know the particulars of your gas stove. And again, what's important here, this is not the electric stove that my parents had in North Carolina with the coils.
Resistance, yeah.
It is not a resistance heater. It is induction.
Yeah, they're a lot more efficient.
Do you know any high-end restaurants that have gone all electric? I think that would be a big selling point. If you had somebody like a pizza restaurant or something that
went the electric route.
On this listserv they have been talking about what restaurants have gone induction, and there's
French
a bunch
Laundry.
of them.
Do they make 480-volt commercial?
French Laundry induction.
Do they make 480-volt commercial induction ranges?
Another presentation that we had on this, I forget if it was one of your workshops or at one of the RICAPS meetings, they talked about high-end restaurants that are going induction, and Guy Fieri and his cooking show, and yeah, French Laundry was all induction.
Nice.
I can see
Big
the
selling point, I would
little,
think.
brick oven, and then you stick it in there, and it's an induction thing, and a little brick.
You still have to, well, I mean, with a pizza,
have to
you,
look, although.
I don't even know how you do that.
Yeah. So we can geek. I don't say to geek out, but that's what I will say. We can geek out in going through each one of these numbers and sort of what it means. But critically here, when we look at the mixed fuel use and that percentage, in other words, you have to do right now. You have to meet Title 24, and then, for example, if you're going for a retail office, depending on the size, you have to do 15% more. That's the maximum amount, in essence, that the California Energy Commission modeling said you could make them do it, because after that it becomes it's not cost effective, and that's not fair. Again, if you want to really get at the root of the problem, you can't go get at the root of the problem through these codes. You have to do something outside of the code, which is simply say no appliances or no piping, or do what Sunnyvale just did, which said if you build all electric, we'll give you another carrot, which is we'll let you build a little bit into the setbacks, and no, a little bit bigger. Wasn't that what they did? Okay, yeah, so Berkeley said,
The setback.
Sunnyvale said you can build bigger footprint than you would because you're all electric. In other words, we're taking a trade-off here.
So what about,
Sorry.
I mean, say you wanted to do all electric in a multifamily building, but much like fancy buildings in San Francisco, you wanted to have like a gas fireplace on the roof deck or something, some vanity use.
Propane.
Gas. Propane?
Propane.
That might actually be worse.
No, propane global warming footprint is 1. So 1 pound of propane emitted, if it emits in its raw form, emits 1 pound is equivalent to 1 pound of CO2. With natural gas, you emit 1 pound of the CH4 molecule. It's 40 times more potent than
It's a lighter,
CO2.
it's a smaller chain.
Yeah,
Okay.
so instead of C3C8, C3H8, it's, yeah.
I did not know that. Thank you.
Yeah,
that's
so,
nice.
yeah, so here's, well, when you come
That's a good point.
when you come to my house, so you'll note if my wife's there, she's from Boston, and she grew up in an incredibly not very energy efficient old home. So for her, having a fireplace was something she wanted in our house. And again, back in 2008, when we were planning our house, we didn't know that the heat pump would work. We didn't know that the heat recovery, all this stuff wouldn't work that you're going to see. But it does. So again, I ripped out I had Palo Alto, City Palo, come and take out the gas meter, all that, and I just stuck a 5-gallon propane cylinder. I got the different threads, and just that's connected to the side of the house. And we go through one of those cylinders per year, roughly, and that's essentially 32 kilowatt hours. So that is roughly about 20 hours worth of hair drying is the energy used by that propane cylinder for when guest comes, or it's dark outside and we want to go, sit around the fireplace. And you'll see all this.
Okay, good to know.
I'm so
Just a-
excited.
Just a clarification question. So, for some types of units, the percentage is lower, 5% as opposed to 15%. Is that because multifamily units are already more efficient, and so we aren't asking them to exceed the state standards by all that much? Is that why?
No, it's because when we model the code in terms of how much more efficient can we make it, it becomes not cost effective
Okay.
at that point. And again, this is
So
a
that's
very
the only thing is the cost effectiveness.
exactly, and we can't violate in terms of. It's very funny. You can do outside of the Title 24 code. You can do whatever you want as a city in terms of banning natural gas or all that sort of thing. But if you're building a building, you have to follow Title 24 or have your own what are called REACH codes. And again, I don't like the word REACH codes because it sounds like you're doing the state code plus more. You're just doing something different that is suited to what your local residents want. And it's no huge burden on the plan checkers. What they don't like, and this is why it's so important, they don't want to have to learn the Title 24 2019 code and then you guys come along and say, oh, we're going to change it in 2020 because we just learned. Then they'll have to go back and relearn or learn new code stuff, change their plan checking, so that the whole point is that we do this in sync with the Title 24 2019 code adoption process. So again, they don't even have to worry about that section of what the state's telling them to do. This is what our local citizenry wants us to do.
So why is it 15% versus 5%? What
because
economic factor is causing that to not be?
So for right now, this is what makes me feel so sad. The technology was based on, and this is also why your EV code is so sparse. They're taking numbers from essentially 2015, 2016 about heat pumps and the efficiency and how large, because there's not a huge number of large heat pumps. There wasn't back in 2015, 2016 when they started planning and doing this engineering and work. Or it's because they didn't come up with the codes last year. They've been working on them for several years, and so they didn't have the technology that we have today. In essence,
so can't that be revisited?
It's.
I mean, I'm sorry.
It takes a very, very long time. Essentially, this is the codes are, Title 24 is a 3-year code cycle. So we adopted a 2016 code. It went into effect in 2017. They've basically been working on this set of codes and these cost effectiveness studies since they got done with the last one. So by the time they did all of that work again, we'd already be to the next one. We want to adopt as much as we can that we can get away with now, because
okay,
yeah,
thanks.
It takes a long time.
Got it. All right.
What? I mean, the gas companies can't just be rolling over and. What are they doing to combat this?
So they've actually set up a questionable citizenry group to say that we're out to take away your gas stove without talking about how the replacement, and we're not taking away your gas stove. We're not saying that right now. What we're saying is new construction should be all electric because it's safer and healthier, and long term it's way better for the planet. So that they are they're fighting that. They're fighting it.
I'm wondering because I haven't
Right.
really seen anything that doesn't
Right.
say much, so I just was curious.
They're going to be fighting much more at the state level
Yeah.
than they are going to be fighting. They're not going to come
Not
down
come to
here
city.
and say, that's why part of me says it would be fun to go say, no, we're going to solve this problem. We're just going to say no more
No.
gas appliances for new construction or major modifications. Just this is who
Right.
we are. We recognize
Brisbane says so.
Yeah.
This is what being a responsible global citizen means.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So next agenda item, or is there more discussion?
I don't know if there's anything else that we need to talk about on the building electrification side. I will note that each of these have that electric wiring requirement. That's the prescriptive requirement Peninsula Clean Energy was talking about. So if somebody did choose to go mixed fuel, that would be kind of the future-proofed, as we had talked about earlier.
So I will add two things to this, or one thing particularly. This week, we found out that there's potential on the all-electric pathway to mandate heat pump, all-electric water heaters and all-electric space heaters. There's a potential. If we find that to be true, may we have your permission to change what you've seen here, should that be found to be correct?
This committee can't give you that authority on their own.
We'd love
Right.
Make a
to.
recommendation.
Right, that's what I'm saying. In other words, it would be okay. In other words, if you saw something more stringent, you would be happy.
I would sign off on anything that met its cost efficiency study,
Right,
Yeah, we could
personally.
bring it to the city council's attention.
right. But
Doesn't mean it'll go past.
Right.
But we're,
it would-
yes,
Yeah.
we would definitely all support.
Okay, that, I guess that
I-
would be
I
the only
believe.
thing is if
Oh,
what we've
profit.
found out about what's going on in Carlsbad does get approved. Sorry, so there's a city that's even ahead of well, doing it differently than, anyway, I don't want to get into the details. Let's talk
but-
about,
Let's just,
I will be
Let us
very
know.
interested to follow up with you on more and see what else we can do.
I just had one question. So the proposed reach code, does the none mean that they're doing away with the 1 kilowatt PV system, or does
I'm
that mean
gonna
no
go
change?
to that next. We are trying to wrap
Okay.
up the building electrification
Sure.
stuff. So sounds like we're ready to move on to that. So Sven, this is probably not in part of what you guys have focused on, but we already have an existing mandate to install solar PV and cool roofs in our existing code, and we are hoping to carry that forward with the new code cycle. But the new code actually does have a solar PV requirement for low-rise residential. So that's our single-family duplex and small multifamily under one definition. The one Sven was talking about with the EV charging, their definition that they've been using for small multifamily is the less than 40. In this case, you can see in the small print down there at the bottom, this is less than 3 stories and or 3 to 16 units. So that is already required in the state code.
So it's being dropped from the reach code because it's going into the
because
basic
the state
code.
code is already
All right.
essentially better, quite frankly.
Okay.
then when we start.
Yeah, than what
Thank
we
you.
currently have on the books. And then we essentially are saying just carry forward what we have in all of those other areas that don't have a solar requirement. We have had some discussion and are proposing to drop the cool roof portion for a number of reasons related to requiring different roofing types in different sections, and actually had heard that there were some, how did they put this? Some questions about the impact and the cost effectiveness of cool roofs in areas that don't get very hot like we are here. So it's not, it's something people could still choose to do, but with a PV requirement, it's not a particularly impactful thing. So it's kind of more a cleanup thing that we would probably drop that going forward. And we've talked with San Mateo, and they are essentially aligned in this way as well. As you all know, our existing code, REACH code, was modeled on theirs, basically copied from theirs. So we would continue to be aligned with the city of San Mateo on this front. Questions on that part?
Yeah, I'm just a little more curious about the, because I mean, I know the cool roofs had to go through a cost effectiveness study in order to be in the original REACH code. So I guess I'm just, and we can talk later after the meeting. I'm a little confused about why the change. But if we learned, I'm willing to learn right there with you.
I'm kind of quoting what Ken told me he learned after the last one was adopted, and there was kind of some follow-up conversation about the impact being really limited in our area and the cost effectiveness kind of being maybe questionable. I don't know all of the details of that. I'm kind of just going third hand there.
I'll have to talk to Ken about it.
Okay. I think that wraps this up if there's no other.
I'm pleased as punch.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, Sven, for taking the time, missing the scout meeting, coming up to talk with us. We did want to, before you go, to talk about the next meeting. I don't know if you want to jump to the slide all the way at the very end. But we were planning to take a field trip down to see Project Green Home, Sven's home in Palo Alto, for our next meeting. We had hoped to actually do that and have this conversation there in person, but since that didn't work out, we're going to try for next time. He's available to host us on Wednesday, June 19th, our regular meeting date. And it sounds like the time is flexible as well. So I guess there's just a question for the committee about whether we want to plan to meet here, carpool down, plan to start the meeting at 6:30 or plan to start earlier. What works for folks on the committee?
I'm open to anything.
Carpooling down.
Definitely carpool, but I'd
Definitely
say we
carpool.
leave
Yeah.
early if we can, depending on people's schedules.
I probably
I'm-
couldn't leave any earlier than 6:30 just because of childcare concerns.
Yeah.
We have a trampoline and a cargo net.
Or
She's
I
a
could just bring
baby.
him.
She's a bubba.
You could just bring him.
And even childcare. I could arrange childcare too.
Bring the little one.
So accommodating.
Wow, we're
one's
so
just-
privileged. Significant others? Because I know my husband would be interested too.
So this is actually, sorry,
So would mine.
I'm blessed, that my wife, wanted House Beautiful, and we bought Solar Times at the right time, and as a chemical engineer, I wanted crazy and, cutting edge energy efficiency. And we got that, and it is fully functional. We've had 3,000 plus people coming for it, so.
Wow.
Bring as
Wow.
many over the 8 years we've lived there. Bring as many people as you want with you. We have regular home tours. If you want to come for dinner, we can cook on and you guys like to cook, we can cook on the induction stove. We can get some little, like dorm style induction stove burners for you guys to actually play with. I am more than happy to facilitate whatever you want. The actual tour of the home itself takes, I can do it between 20 minutes and I've been there with some people for 2 hours on, why did you do this? Why did you do this?
Well, now that we've had all this conversation, hopefully we won't take that much time, but I'm not going to guarantee that.
Me neither.
We'll swing by Costco on the way down.
Yeah. You guys are all, it's important to me because you are all influencers in your community. And I really feel like a lot, certainly on the stove part, that people really perceive the way they cook. I mean, the architect, for us to go to induction, literally had to grab us by our shirt front and say, if you're going to build this sort of house that you want to build, you have to go in induction. And later on, you will thank me. Which we have. Multiple times. And again, my wife, again, the position is, again, healthier, safer, and for her, much more convenient.
Yeah.
And again, I'm happy. So I'm happy if you guys want to have dinner with us.
Dinner's
or
good.
Dinner, I am happy to do that. We can do 20 people dinners. It's weird setup, but it works. It's not, I mean, it's only 20, depending on how you count the square footage, it's between 22 and 2,600 square feet. So it's not huge or anything.
Well, I would love to see that just because I work for 2 different caterers, and one of them, we have a general manager of a commissary kitchen where we have a lot of different people, which is where my tenants just bought the 2 induction ovens, actually.
I'm really glad we did this way. I really thank you for coming up and taking the extra time. But I think having this conversation on a publicly broadcasted meeting was really valuable,
Yeah.
as opposed to just you talking to us at your house. So, but there'll be more, I'm sure.
Oh,
So both. Thank you.
So it sounds like maybe we will plan to be at Sven's house at 6:30, and not going to work.
Well, I mean, if I can bring
that's it.
James, then yeah, I can. I'll just haul him down here. And
I guess that's up to you if you would like to. I think I'm a little hesitant to say we want to leave here at 6:30 because then
We'll
we
get
won't
there
get-
for a long time.
it's going to be a very
So,
long evening, I think.
You have the regular, we'll talk about babysitters later. You can always get,
I can either get a babysitter or he can tag along. He'd probably be asleep anyway. It'd be fine.
true.
So we'll plan carpooling, for 5:30 or something to arrange, and maybe we should plan some potluck to bring to dinner or
To
something
cook.
of
We'll
that
bring
sort.
food
So-
to cook,
Yeah, bring food to cook.
right?
Okay,
So we'll bring the food to cook.
Okay, yeah.
And then,
fantastic.
I will get a couple more, so because the 4 burner, it's just a family.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I will get some induction, dormitory.
right. Which would be interesting anyway. I'd like to see those
Yeah,
two.
actually, I'm curious to see how those work too.
You can't be there? Oh, darn. We're also coming.
She's doing amazing things in Scotland,
She's going to
so.
Scotland.
Yeah, so if you miss, we're relocating to Barcelona come late July or August for a year. I have sabbatical, gotta take it.
Oh, yeah.
But when we come back, I mean, people knock on the door and we give them the 15-minute tour.
You guys are so cute. That's adorable.
Because
That's awesome. It is.
I'll take a rain check.
Okay.
Cool.
It's all right.
Yes.
I'm actually gonna go home.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you
so
very
much for coming.
Thank you, Sen.
Thank you very much. We very much appreciate that. Your hard work and, wow. Awesome.
Okay, I move that we approve the April minutes. Well, that was bold.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Guys have it.
Do you not have the agenda?
Well, I had, no. I had it on my phone, but my phone just died. I forgot to plug it in. No, I don't. No. Okay, where are we?
Election of chair.
Election of chair and vice chair. What's next? Approval, election of chair and vice chair.
And then subcommittee reports calendar.
Let's go by one.
I'm vice chair right now.
You're vice chair, does that mean you're moving into this position of chair?
If you guys want me to, I will,
I think that would be lovely.
but it's up to you guys.
You got my vote.
Someone just has to say, or propose that then?
Yeah,
I propose we do that.
you propose that Michelle
I-
becomes the chair.
I wasn't catching all of that. So
Michelle, we're proposing that Michelle becomes the chair, since she's the vice chair. So now we need to know who would like to volunteer for vice chair. We?
Mary?
Mary?
Oh, I'm still too new.
No,
but you won't be in a year from now.
Now's your chance to learn.
Yeah, I think you should.
That's vice chair. Then you got a whole nother year of being with this wonderful woman who, okay,
Okay.
all right.
Alrighty.
Yay.
So do we vote?
So, do we vote? Is that how we do it? We vote?
Yeah.
I think, do we need to state what we're doing clearly and then?
Yeah, so clearly we are looking to elect Michelle Salmon as chair and Mary what's your last name?
Rogers.
Rogers as vice chair. All in favor, say aye.
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 No nays? So I would say that we have a new chair and vice chair.
Okay.
excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Election ever.
Next, subcommittee reports. Open space.
We have met. We have not met. We have not.
I think we were trying to pull a meeting together, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we still need to do that. Adrian, the open space meeting, we need to pull that together for a date.
Yeah.
Are you
Oh,
on speaker?
Oh, sorry.
Adrian turned it off. I have Ross and I have Mary and I have Michelle. When generally can you guys meet? Like on a Wednesday that we don't, in the evening that we don't have a meeting, or before a meeting, or dates?
Yeah.
Yeah, Wednesdays are fine. I mean, a little bit later is better.
Maybe like a 7.
7 would probably be okay.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Okay.
So what date do we want to do that?
Guys, I can do next week.
22nd?
The one after, or maybe not the 29th. How about the 22nd?
22nd?
Sounds. I can make that.
Check my
You
calendar.
think, Ross?
Hang on, I'm checking. The 22nd. Looks okay right now.
Okay.
All right, I'll send.
So
it
at
out.
7 o'clock.
Okay, next. Climate action plan.
So we have not met recently. We're scheduled to meet next week to talk about the benchmarking ordinance, I believe. Is that right?
No, actually, probably primarily on the CAP staff training would be our agenda. We can discuss the benchmarking ordinance, but we'll have some staff training stuff that we need to discuss.
Okay. I don't know if this is the right place to bring it up, but last time this committee met, I mentioned a climate emergency declaration. A whole bunch of cities are doing this. And the committee was somewhat interested, so I sent you, Adrienne and Karen, right before the meeting, a couple of links, and I'm sorry I didn't get to it earlier. I read the one for Chico, and I read the one for San Francisco, and I have to say that a lot of the stuff that's in those declarations of climate emergency is stuff we're already working on through the Climate Action Plan. However, the committee might want to consider asking the council to declare a climate emergency, partly to put pressure on our governor to declare a statewide climate emergency. So maybe we could agendize something for the next meeting when I won't be here. But I did supply some materials. Maybe the committee would like to discuss them next time around.
Maybe in July, if we're going to be meeting at.
Right.
I'm probably not going to be here in July either. I've got 2 separate trips this summer, and they're going to cover. Yeah.
Well, regardless of your attendance, I would say probably not next month when we're at Sven's house. So probably in
Right.
July.
Okay.
Okay,
So.
sure.
Okay, next is events.
So, Bob and I scoped out a site for the next Habitat Restoration Day, which will be in the last Saturday in June, right? And it looks like we're going to do the trailhead from Trinity Road that leads up onto San Bruno Mountain, where the old water tank used to be. There's a lot of broom and other invasives that get tracked onto the mountain through that trail. So it's a really important link to get cleaned up. So that's tentatively what we're planning.
Which trail again, Michelle?
From Trinity Road,
Oh, that one way up high.
the one on Trinity that's between like 100 Trinity and 200 Trinity, that goes kind of diagonally up and then cuts back and goes on up the mountain.
I use that one a lot.
Yeah, a lot of people use that one a lot. And it goes by, there's a place there where there's a fenced-in circle where the old water tank used to be, and
Right.
up and then turns. Yeah, and it's part of the interface zone, and so it's important that we work on that. And then we need to put together a plan for Day in the Park. And also, I will not be here for Coastal Cleanup Day on September 21st. My niece is getting married. Sorry, that's more important. So I hoping on Coastal Cleanup Day we're still gonna do Harney Way.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it lately, so yeah, as it gets closer, I'll do a scouting and see if it needs it, if there's something else that needs it more. But
I'm pretty sure it needs it.
yeah,
I happened to be talking to rec staff, and they said they thought the logistics worked out really well. So, if that's the spot, they're probably okay with.
That'd be great. And if we could get Caltrans to clean up the other side of the road before we do it, that'd be really awesome.
yeah. I put in a service request last time. They cleaned it up within a week.
Before or after? After.
No, right before, right up to their. I don't know about the other side of the road, but I put it up for that side on Harney before I realized that where their right of way stopped, because and they had come out and done it on the correct side of the road, but they stopped right at their right of way. So anyone can put a service request anytime to Caltrans, and they were out there quick and had that cleaned up.
Oh, good. Okay. So let's plan that.
Can I just ask Bob a question?
Sure.
So I was just wondering if there's any word from the county on invasive species removal up in the park area?
We're having a meeting May 23rd where we're going to be on the mountain and they're going over there.
Oh, okay, great.
I thought it was May 30th.
May 30th. Sorry, I'm confusing. I have a lot of things going on in May.
Okay.
Yeah, May 30th. But there, I think we're gonna be up on the mountain, and they're going over all their plan.
Okay, great. And then on events, do we want to include Picnic in the Weeds for if anybody on the committee wants to join us?
I have that under calendar items.
Oh, okay, thank you. That's it. Unless, Mary, did you have something to add for?
No, I don't. Yeah, I won't be able to go to the 27th of June because I have a wedding to go to.
Well, then
So
you're in charge on September
I'll do
21st.
The coastal cleanup, yeah. No, it was well organized last year.
Yeah, I had this best
Yeah.
picture of
Yeah.
Mary like jumping, putting stuff in the dumpster.
In the dumpster.
It's so cool.
Okay, next is education and outreach.
I actually went to the library and spoke to, I can't remember their names, but they gave me a contact, Elizabeth Carr, who I've sent an email to, and I explained that we wanted to redo the display. Maybe something simple because they will be moving to the new library, hopefully, in October. And so one of the ideas I put out there, and you guys chime in if you agree, is just to do something very simple where we can say Earth Day is every day, and maybe come up with 5 to 10 books for kids to read over the summer that are focused on saving the earth and what they can do to better it. And maybe we can, if they read 5 to 10 books, we can give them some sort of maybe a tote bag or something once they complete the complete the reading. Something very simple until we get our foot in the door in the new library.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, because it's just not that wall is not organized, and it just looks awful. So and they're ready to pull down everything as well. So
I like it.
so if that's okay, I'll just go ahead and move forward with that.
You're welcome to.
Okay.
I have no problem with that suggestion whatsoever. I was going to note that we are going to have a summer intern whose focus is really on education and outreach.
Okay.
I'm expecting a candidate selected. This was going to be one of my staff updates, but here you go right now. Candidate selected, going through the HR process.
Okay.
I'm expecting her to start on June 3rd.
Oh, great.
And she has a great background in doing outreach stuff.
Okay.
So if you need help with things,
Yeah,
that
yes,
is something, you know,
Okay.
she'll be working 25 to 28 hours a week, and that's her focus. So
Okay.
she can definitely help you with that. If it's a couple more weeks to wait, but at this point, maybe a couple more weeks is still okay.
It's
Great.
taken a while, but we'll get there. Okay. That's my update. Thank you.
Invasive.
Festival.
Oh, we're not doing invasive species? Is that because?
No, because we put it off until we were going to do that in the summer.
Okay.
Until Barbara's done with her project.
Oh, okay. And then festival tree replacement options with Park and Rec. Have we heard anything about setting a time to talk to Park and Rec?
Is that is that the next step?
Yeah.
We'll do that.
And I think you and I were going to talk to
Sean.
Sean.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll bug you about it.
Okay. And PCA grant application, have we heard anything about that at all?
No.
That's
I
weird.
think we're still,
Okay.
hopefully that no news is not bad news.
I think,
And-
I mean, it took them a lot longer to put out that call for projects than they were saying, so kind of on par.
Okay.
All right.
Coming.
Keep our fingers crossed.
And then the tree ordinance, I was really
Yeah.
disappointed
Yeah,
that
it's
the council balked at it, and
I didn't make it to that one. What happened?
Lots of conversation about a bunch of different positions, so it's on the council agenda for June 6th to form an ad hoc committee with 2 council members, 1 OSEC member, and 1 planning commission member.
Which meeting did they go over that again? Because I'd like to go rewatch it.
May 2nd.
Okay.
There was concern about the health of trees. Some of the council members mentioned that, did you,
I didn't watch it. I was
Okay.
sick.
Oh, okay. That they had been contacted about people that were concerned about trees falling, and maybe it was with the intense winter. I wasn't there, so I don't know if the council members were able to discern whether they were street trees that then the city would deal with, or they were private trees in neighbors' homes. So that's what this new subcommittee would look at, some of those issues.
Yeah, our tree ordinance didn't prevent anybody from taking out a diseased tree, so I'm kind of confused.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was.
maintenance,
I wasn't at the
probably.
meeting. It kind of went.
Okay.
It was
I'll have
kind
to
of
watch
bit
it because that
unclear
doesn't. Yeah.
what they all wanted, so that's why they talked about having
Okay.
subcommittee revisit.
Yeah.
So, asking, I guess this is a good time to ask, would you want to?
I'd like to follow through. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
Good. Then the liaison for the benchmarking ordinance, Mr. Dykes.
Oh, yes. Where are we with that? We did actually have the kickoff meeting a few weeks ago.
The first workshop, yeah, I don't think you were at the April OSEC meeting, so that was actually just a couple days, I think, after the first workshop. So we did mention that briefly there, and I have more that I was going to report on in staff updates, or I can just go ahead and do it now if you'd prefer.
Yeah, let's do it now.
Now would be good.
So, let me see. There's been a lot of activity, frankly, between this and the REACH codes. I don't feel like I've done a whole lot else lately. We have set a date for the next public workshop. It's going to be the evening of June 12th at the Doubletree. Those of you who were at the first workshop may remember that an audience member, Alistair, who was there, who is a efficiency consultant, mentioned that the Doubletree had an audit, and so we are working with him and I believe have the new GM of the Doubletree and Alistair teed up to be part of that discussion at that next meeting, so we can kind of have that case study, if you will, about kind of going through an audit. We just this morning sent out the first invitation for that workshop, and also a survey. So the survey is focused on benchmarking, which was kind of more of the discussion at the first workshop. We really didn't get into the auditing or any of those requirements, and that's what we're going to start getting into at this next workshop. So workshop, survey, and we have decided that it would be good to have a kind of walkthrough example of what it really looks like to benchmark a building. So we're going to do that as a webinar the week prior to the workshop. It's kind of a primer for people who aren't familiar with that. People who are used to benchmarking buildings don't necessarily need to participate in that unless they want a refresher, but it will help inform the kind of conversation at the next workshop to be able to have a little bit more of a technical discussion. So those are some of the things that we've been working on getting together. We have also, primarily me, been talking with them about some of the kind of checklist of decision points that we need to make. So that'll be a big part of our conversation with staff between now and the workshop, and then at that workshop about just all of the different decisions, what kind of size threshold buildings are going to have for what kind of requirements, and if there will be any fees, and when deadlines should be, and all of those kind of details that'll need to go into the draft ordinance. So we're doing all of that, and then last week Michelle came and met with Karen and I to have a little kind of follow-up discussion on PR for the ordinance. And so Michelle, this is news to you, and I hope you're going to like it. We had further conversation after our meeting with you, with the consultants, and Karen and I actually walked around City Hall and did a little informal focus grouping with other City Hall staff and visitors about a few naming options, and we've decided to keep it very simple as just building efficiency program. It actually aligns really well with what we had in our grant application, which was a little bit longer, but we feel like it kind of can cover the energy, can cover the water, can cover the whole aspects of the comprehensive ordinance and program that will follow.
So we can call it BEEP.
Yeah, that's what I was about to
Kind of.
say. Everybody uses acronyms, and
Energy
BEEP is
efficiency
not
program.
really doing it for me.
No, I like it. I like it. You should have seen some of the other ones we had.
I like the Batto.
Bap is no Batto.
Nah,
no.
it wasn't really. It wasn't really.
I like
cool.
Batto.
I think
That's all right, but what it stood for, one of the discussion points that we had was actually having benchmarking as part of the title of what it is, didn't really address what we're really trying to do, which was
the word benchmarking.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things that in our discussion is what's the purpose of what we're doing.
And we asked people at City Hall that did not know what we were doing, and they all said that sounds like electrical, HVAC, and maybe landscaping and water efficiency.
Right. So Beth, you get used to Beth.
We actually had a kind of conversation. If you put Brisbane in front of him, then it's like beep beep. And then we were talking about the Road Runner and.
Okay.
You're not going for that, Barb?
I'm defeated.
At that point, just make
Don't
it
worry,
Brisbane
don't
Energy
worry.
Efficiency Program and actually make it BEEP.
Do what?
Yeah.
Brisbane Energy Efficiency Program. So
Yeah.
it's BEEP.
Yeah, beep sounds better than BEP.
Yeah. Just make it beep.
But my point all along on including energy in this is that it's energy and water, and if you
Yep.
include both of them in the name, then it gets way too long,
Way too
really
long.
fast.
Mm-hmm.
BEAP.
So I know that the energy is the far bigger part of this than the water, but they're both going to be in there. So I think to not include them both, but include one of them is kind of confusing. So
That is good.
Well, sneaking the word environmental in there somewhere, and then it's.
I like it. I like it.
Building environmental efficiency.
Good work.
I think that's
That's
pretty
it.
much everything on that.
Okay. Next.
Calendar items.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a number of flyers for some of the upcoming ones in the slides, so we'll go ahead and go to that. If we need to come back to the full calendar, we can. But
You didn't put your picture in here. I sent it to you specifically.
I think I had actually already done this before you sent me that picture. but-
Mm-hmm. We know how that works.
That was Earth Day.
That was cool.
Okay, so this is coming up on
Monday.
Monday, so if any of you guys can make it, we're going to meet at City Hall
Um,
and then do about an hour and a half hike up Firth Canyon, and then get over to the Mission Blue Nursery. And so Ariel said he'd like about a half an hour to tour the nursery and then a half hour for a bring your own picnic lunch. And we'll be done about 1 o'clock.
Are we gonna also, as we do that, are we gonna drive by the other canyons on the way to Firth?
I'm going to put together a presentation and kind of see how many people are here. And sure, I was thinking we would, but if it seems like we're in a bunch of cars, I will. And then, are you around the next couple of days, Michelle? If I have any questions, my plan was tomorrow morning to put the presentation together. I'm just going to do, 5-minute kind of history because
Yep.
Mark Heath said he's come in, so I thought he could spend more time in the canyon talking about the actual work he's done. And then, so yeah, I will play it by ear and for sure mention the other canyons and maybe I was going to do a run through and see what I thought as far as getting there. I don't know. Not if they're doing that road construction still. That was my other thought.
Oh, yeah, that was awful.
Yeah.
But just for the rest of the committee, the canyon we worked on last summer for the Habitat Day the part we did looks fabulous.
Yeah, and that's why I was going to do, I'm going to bring it, I think I'm going to do either like kind of a pamphlet like Ariel does or maybe just a chart so there's only one page that everyone, and I was thinking in the Firth Park parking lot, kind of once we get up there, here's the before, here's the after, and kind of show them just a few, give them more of a timeline with some recent stuff. So not like a deep dive, but just so they really understand that we're committed, we've been committed for a long time, and we're doing way more than probably any other city of this size or any. They were kind of surprised when we reached out to them, so I thought I would just put together a timeline of like the big items and the recent items.
Okay.
But everyone's welcome, and so bring your own picnic.
We also have a e-waste drop-off event. This is actually a county-wide event, so anyone within San Mateo County is able to come, but we are hosting for the County Office of Sustainability, and you
really?
can see some of those other partners there. So this is June 8th, 10 to 1 at the Marina. It's gonna be in the north end of the parking lot, but we'll have a bunch of signs and whatnot out to get everybody there, and you can see what is and is not accepted. We've got some of this, I think already has gone out in the city weekly email blast. It'll be in the Star, and we'll kind of ramp up some social media messaging as well. So tell your friends and neighbors if they've got e-waste they've been stacking up in the garage or something, they've got a place they can get rid of it.
Can you send me a PDF, a JPEG of this?
Sure.
Okay, because I'm going to post it on the Yacht Club website, Facebook page. Too.
Okay.
I won't be here that day. My niece is graduating from high school, but I want to make sure people know about it and stuff. I might drop off a package.
So, we will work out the logistics of the meeting, and I'll go over everything we talked about tonight. And
Cute.
This is another Bob Sage original, isn't it?
Is this
Yes.
yours? Great.
I love it.
Barbara's the only person I know who's ever shown up in a dress.
I know, this is.
Must be me.
It's so cute, though. I love your artwork.
Yeah.
Pictures in the weeds, just adorable.
I want this one on a T-shirt.
Yeah,
Can
can
I
we
get
have
this
fun
one on a
t-shirts?
T-shirt?
This would be a cute T-shirt.
Yeah, it would.
I don't know, but I do have fun with them, so I do like the the kind words.
All right, yeah.
Got
I
our t-shirts
love
for the
it.
year, and
See, this kind of t-shirt I would wear.
Yeah.
The other ones I don't.
I cut the
Well-
necks out and wear 'em for jammies.
Yeah.
wait, did you go to the last one?
I did not. I was.
The t-shirts were really well received.
Well, it was.
It's the same t-shirt, so if you go there's 2 more chances.
I'll go to. I couldn't. I.
The
was
t-shirts were well received.
I did the
changed-
bar for.
Can you put this on like Cafe Press or something? I can get my own.
So cute.
It is
What's
so
Cafe
cute.
Press?
So cute.
Hmm? It's like a website. You just upload things, and then people can pay to have them printed. And
Oh, I think it's city property technically, but
tech. Well,
I, you can
Proceeds,
do what you'd like.
benefit.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Benefiting the Habitat to Restoration Day.
Yeah, and I think if it says meet at Quarry Road, just west of Littman School, people are going to be thinking we're doing Quarry Road, and we're not.
Yeah, we'll work out the logistics.
Okay. All right.
And my plan was to keep the poster simple to make it look clean. That's why y'all said you liked it, because
Yeah.
the Art Deco posters don't have hardly any writing on them. But then with the next door and whatever you post it on, you can add the details.
Right.
So
So cute.
anyway,
Fun.
Uh,
Hey, chair and committee matters. Does it matter?
there's an Ohm hour tomorrow from 8 to 9.
A who?
Ohm hour.
oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
So also, Mountain Watch's San Bruno Mountain Watch Mission Blue Nursery. The next plant sale is June 8th, the same day as the
E-waste.
e-waste thing. It'll be from 9 to 2 at the Mission Blue Nursery. I'm just mentioning that. There was something else. I forgot what it was.
Have we, so Michelle was telling me earlier, because I asked that the city council is finally going to be talking, interviewing people for this that have want to come on this committee.
Oh yeah. How's our candidates doing?
Candidate?
Yes, they finally scheduled. It's June. Right, it's June 3rd, I think, that they're interviewing. So then they will have to appoint by resolution at their meeting on June 20th.
Okay.
4 months. Okay.
Do you know who else applied? Can you tell us or no?
There were 2 applicants.
Who are the 2 applicants?
I don't remember the names. One was your.
Well, we know Deb.
Deb
Right,
Horn,
I don't
yeah.
remember the name of the other one.
Was it? I forget her name, but it starts with an M. Maya.
it was the man.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the last name was Lamb.
A man, lamb, man.
Amanda.
Or very close to Lamb. watching.
So I have another committee matter. At the last meeting, Ray brought those 2 articles, and you were going to send them to us.
He did.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. Did I miss it?
No, you missed it.
Oh, it came from Bob. That's why I couldn't find it.
Oh,
today.
yeah,
I
it
looked-
came from Bob.
Okay, I looked at your name and I.
But one of them was illegible before I scanned it in, so I don't.
Yeah.
I couldn't clean it up anymore, and it was not the scanner we used. But anyway, I did what I could.
Okay, okay. So those were from Bob. Thank you. I'm sorry.
On a big screen, not a phone screen.
Not like this.
You can blow it up. You can.
Okay. Okay. So I'll look again. I missed it.
I got inspired and read Bill McKibben's new book, Falter. It was good.
Okay. Do we have any other?
Nope. And staff updates is next.
I have pictures for this too. You remember last month I was going to LA. The very next morning, here's a picture of our panel. Best benchmarking panel ever. We
Is that
had
what MGBC stands for?
no, that stands for
Mega good, bodacious, creative,
was
energetic.
the event acronym. It was a very long named event. It was the Municipal Green Building Conference and Expo. So it was held at Southern California Edison facility, I believe. I don't know if you guys have ever been to the Pacific Energy Center in San Francisco, PG&E's kind of building science energy efficiency training center. It's basically Southern California's equivalent of the same. So I may have been the only or one of the only Northern California people there. It was definitely a lot of Southern California cities and speakers, but it was a really interesting event. Our panel was actually in the main hall, which was a little curious how many people we were going to have. I think we probably had 30 to 40 people, and lots of good questions. So it was very well received and engaging.
Good.
You gotta tell us what you learned at some point. Maybe not now, but
I have like 3 or 4 pages of notes and probably a bag full of handouts somewhere, so I'll have to catch up some other time on that. This was going to be part of my update on the building efficiency program, so this was a part I missed. I'm glad to have the prompt. I got the website up, so we now have a web page. The slides and meeting notes from Workshop 1 are posted there. Registration links for events are posted there. There's the survey link, email, sign up list for people who want to be on that, and just a brief intro. Tried to keep it pretty simple, but as we have more resources and information, they will go on this page or sub-pages of it or something of that sort. So that is up. What else did I stick in here? They are installed. In fact, I think they were installed before our last meeting, and I didn't know it. So there they are, or there is one of them. So that is.
Wow, it's so high.
Maybe that's why I didn't notice it.
What do you mean?
I mean, that's like, no, the sign is so high.
It's like 8 feet, 9, 10 feet tall. That's why I'm like, I didn't even notice it.
I'm fine with that. I remember the sign didn't really I felt like the sign wasn't very explanatory. But
Adopts as well.
No, we haven't. No, not yet. But we had planned to. Sorry, I've been gone for like 10 days out of the last month between all of the conferences and such. But we would like to be doing some outreach on social media and whatnot about these stations. So that is something we'll be working on as we go forward.
Because, and the little green box has the bags? Or
Yes.
the gloves, or what?
Bags.
Okay.
I believe we decided a year ago or whatever when we were discussing this that gloves were potentially problematic and we were going to not do those.
Okay.
yeah.
It seems like the sign is kind of high, but I'll go by and look. Like,
10 feet.
no, it's not 10
It's
feet,
not
but
that tall.
I'm
Yeah.
guessing
So
that's
the fence is
that's
6
probably
foot.
a 6-foot fence, right?
The fence is 6 foot.
That's really high.
That's another 2.
Because if you're walking by it, you're not going to really see that.
But it's in the foreground. It isn't. I don't think it's that bad.
I don't.
To me.
Okay, I'll look.
We'll figure
Yeah.
it out tomorrow.
Do we have them in any other locations?
There are, I believe, 6
Right.
of them.
Okay.
I know one is in Costaños Canyon, one on the Bicentennial Walkway. No, I think we just did Costaños Canyon, not Firth Canyon. Sorry, I don't remember all of the
Okay.
locations.
This is
off the
kind
top
of a
my head.
pilot, and we're gonna see how.
Yeah.
it
Okay.
goes.
Let us know the locations if you could, so that we can
Yeah.
Quick again.
go check them out and, you know.
Is there one on
That's in
Quarry
Old
Road?
Maintenance.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I think we did do Quarry Road
Okay.
as far up as we could have it on city property. I believe Quarry Road was one of them.
Okay, cool. Well, let's see how it works.
I am curious to why it's so high, though. I mean, was there a purpose for that?
You know, when you're near a sidewalk, you're supposed to have clearance. I see the other sign doesn't,
Is
but
that
they might have
Thunder?
used that standard, and maybe they didn't need to.
Okay. Curious. Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Yay.
Yay.
Very cool.
Oh,
Forward
this
to
was
left.
something that Sven could have probably spoken to as well. I was at a Future of Transportation event this morning. It was really fascinating. They had some really great speakers. They were recording it, so it may be available later, video link or something. I would be happy to share when that comes out. But basically, it was a Peninsula Clean Energy and Peninsula Family Services announced this Drive Forward Electric program, which is a program for low-income folks to get up to $4,000 incentive for used electric vehicles. So a really great program to try to expand that EV market, the secondary market, and really be able to reach more lower-income people with EVs. So I thought this was definitely worth sharing, and
Yeah.
I think probably we'll see if we can.
Post
It was literally a scan of a flyer that they had there, but we'll try to get some electronic materials and share those out through our other communications channels. I think that was the last thing I had. That one's a you thing. I do have one more thing, though, that I wanted to mention. I have been, the executive director of the San Mateo County Resource Conservation District has been after me for a while now to join their board, and I have finally accepted that position. So I believe yesterday morning's county Board of Supervisors agenda maybe made that official, and I will be going to my first RCD board meeting tomorrow afternoon, and I think they're swearing me in right at the beginning of the meeting. But they don't necessarily do work in incorporated cities, but they do a lot of work in our unincorporated areas, primarily on the coast, a lot of work with agricultural, communities, but they do also have a lot of really interesting programs on climate and some upcoming programs on wildfire. So this is something that I'm doing not necessarily as a Brisbane employee, but as an individual. But I think there's going to be some kind of benefits to some of our work here as well, especially as the new wildfire programs that they're going to be working on get underway.
Sorry, I missed. Who are you joining?
Resource Conservation District.
Okay.
And so I know that Barbara Cossey has been somebody that Bob and Michelle have been working with on weed management area, which she is a fellow board member of mine. So I'm excited to get to work with her and wanted to be sure you all heard that from me rather than hearing that from her at Picnic in the Weeds before I got a chance to mention it.
Just
I
like
was
to
just-
remind you that the quarry is unincorporated.
I was just double checking the cost of a used Leaf is around $10,000 to $12,000, so $4,000 off. Makes a pretty cheap vehicle that you then don't have to put gas in and don't have to pay maintenance on.
At the meeting this morning, they talked about, they had a speaker who talked about some of the leasing options that are available, and this $4,000, I believe, if I'm getting the right program, they talked about a number of other incentive programs, but can actually help to cover lease costs as well. So there's they've pulled up an example of a bunch of lease offers right now, and you can actually lease, I forget which vehicle it was, for as low as $49 a month. And
Wow.
And some of the incentives
Whoa.
can cover that initial lease payment, that kind of upfront first payment that's higher, and bring it down to hundreds of dollars. So it's a really awesome program. I was really
Yeah, I'm very impressed.
Very cool.
I mean, if you've got a place to charge it, why would you do anything else, really?
See, I've been in communication with the Brisbane School District, and they are having a consultant do a facility assessment, including solar, and the city is hoping to work with them to satisfy the solar requirement for our new modular building when it gets put in next summer. So there's studies going to be done later this summer. And
Are they going to look at windows again? Because last time that went kind of screwy.
I didn't ask about that because
Okay.
the focus was the solar, but
Yeah.
when I get the study, I'll give you guys information.
Yeah, because last time they only looked at window replacement at BES, and that was just astronomical. There was no decent return on investment. And I tried briefly to circle back around with PG&E, and I just kept getting kind of bounced from person to person and getting the same non-answer to my questions. And I don't think it was intentional or anything. I think they were just have a certain way that they're used to dealing with stuff. But I was trying to open a conversation about, rather than removing the windows, retrofitting the windows with a second layer of glass. And because that can be done almost like a la storm window, because that can also often be done much more cost efficiently and reduce leakage on those old like 20, 30 pane windows. But of course, my hypothesis does not a financial study make. So if they're doing something again, I think I would like to see that question rolled in.
Yeah, the age of those windows, probably they wouldn't be able to handle the extra weight.
No, it would sit on a separate frame.
Oh, on a separate frame.
Yeah. Well, it depends. I mean, in our climate, it's usually more efficient to add the second pane on the inside, but it could be done.
Would it seal the outer perimeter of the window frame?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's weird because the window's open. They
Yeah.
do this.
Mm-hmm.
Those windows are older than me,
Yeah.
and that's old.
So, from what I know, the study's underway.
Okay.
and-
I missed it again.
Well, I mean, like I said, they're going to forward the study, and we're going to
Okay.
look at Brisbane's part in the solar. So there's an opportunity to at least see what was
Yeah.
studied and
Yeah.
perhaps comment to the school. You know,
I kind of like, this is not the first time I've flogged this
I mean, it's
horse.
for me,
I mean, I know it's not your job,
yeah.
but is there any advice you can give me? Because it seems like I only ever hear about this after the fact, and then by then it's too late. How do I?
Well, I don't know if the school board probably knew that they were.
Okay, I don't tend to go to school board meetings,
Right.
so I guess I have to. And then the school board changes, and you have to re-ask questions.
Well, you know, I hear you, so I can definitely bring it up and see
Yeah.
what's going on with it. But I didn't even talk about windows or
Yeah,
anything else that they're looking at. I was just asking about the solar because,
yeah. No, that's a good thing to ask too.
I mean, it's definitely, I believe it's for energy efficiency too.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see.
There's a grant cycle for Transportation Development Act Article 3, for which we did apply. The city applied the last cycle for a couple of projects. This time we can submit one. So, and Complete Streets has worked with staff, and we're going to submit this. I'm going to call it the central walkway from Alvarado to San Benito to put stairs
Mm-hmm.
and lighting, hopefully, along there.
Great.
So, cross our fingers. It's a good grant application. We have the CCAG Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee reviews. You do a presentation of them, and they pick the projects. And we have a council member, Karen Cunningham, is sitting on that board now, so
Ooh, what?
Karen,
you can help hopefully bring our projects along. if they
what was the name of the
go
board
well.
she's on?
CCAG Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Oh.
We're continuing on the GI design work, and for the location near Barbara's home, we're moving it to the north side of the street. We are proposing CCAG has to approve our changes because we have a grant to do that project. Hoping that that goes okay, and then we can continue design. That would be built in the fall. And in this last month, I presented to presented about the Bayrin Zero Net Energy Study for the community pool, where we, if I could get the RFP out, we're going to put in heat pump water heaters to the San Francisco Municipal Green Building Task Force. They asked me to come and talk about it. They're looking at electrification for as many, they have their goals that they're trying to reach with their facilities. So they have kind of people from every department. They have their Parks and Rec and their real estate and their public works and their building department, all having this monthly task force. And they've been looking at electrification for a bit. And that's all I've got.
So this is brief. This is just the the current fiscal year that the state has given $2 million to the weed management areas, and this article came out that they're upping it, or he's proposing $3 million. So that's a 50% increase. So I haven't been to a meeting in quite a few months because I missed the last 2 meetings. But Monday, being back in touch with them, they had mentioned that moving forward, if we have any project ideas, that they would potentially be willing to partner. So now with Adrian getting on the board of the RC, I know that they're quite involved and they're going to see what we're doing. So I feel like we're setting ourselves up pretty well. And they were saying they hope the budget keeps increasing. So I was just sharing that it seems like it was a good time to get our foot in the door, because now the money's starting to come in, which had been gone for years. So
Great, thank you.
Boy, we already discussed this one.
Before we adjourn, the next California Climate Action Planning Conference has been set for August 15th and 16th.
Yes. That should have been on my staff updates. Thank you for mentioning it. I have that on my calendar.
Yep. Maybe we can take Amtrak down together.
It's one of the most incredible train rides you'll go on.
Yeah, I went down
Amtrak's
the train
awesome
last
down.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's
beautiful.
actually really cool.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
It's a short walk from the train station to campus. I just wheeled my little suitcase.
I'm good with that. That's what I did last year for the statewide energy efficiency conference, although it's probably a less exciting Amtrak ride to Sacramento.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Is that it? And we are adjourned.
Okay. You just wait to put hammer that
All that
thing
time.
up.
Yeah. I just wait.
Oh. I screwed up my knee while we